Aloha! What's up, everybody? Welcome to Truth in Movies. Today, we're breaking down the classic movie Stargate, which has been recommended by a few people. It's one of my favorite movies of all time. We're going to jump into it and check out a lot of the esoteric breadcrumbs, and hopefully we'll present the movie to you in a way that you never really considered before. We're going to check out a lot of stuff, including portals, ancient Egyptian hieroglyphs, and much more. Pyramids. Let's start with the intro. Welcome everybody in the live stream. Welcome to all the future people who are watching. Let's start off with the beginning. I like to check out these intros and to see like who made the movies and stuff, because I found that there's often some symbolism just here in the little logos that reference what the movie's going to be about, right? Oftentimes these movie production companies, they create these logos that give a feel for all of the types of stories that they present in the movies. So, for example, we've broken down this one before, but let's take a closer look at it, and let's especially compare just this film. You see the film around the lion? We've broken down the etymology of the word lion before, and we found that it's directly related to the word love and to light, and a word that means to flow. It means it's the ancient word lu or lev, which means to flow, essentially, if you go back far enough. But let's check it out. We got the circle right there in the middle with the lion or the light in the middle, and then we've got this film kind of like emanating out of the circle off to the sides there. And when we compare it to what the film is about, which is Egyptian, ancient Egyptian culture and history, we see that it bears a striking resemblance to an ancient god called Aten. Aten, the god Aten. So you can see here that the god Aten is typically portrayed as like a sun god, or sometimes they say the sun disk, because it's just a circle up in the sky. And out of the bottom, we have all of these hands that reach out. And then right there in the middle, Aten is directly related with the Ankh, or the symbol in ancient Egypt that represents a life force, basically, or an energy that gives life, right? So check it out. It's very similar. We got this one and then this one. This is how it looks in ancient Egyptian hieroglyphs or hieroglyphs, which is really interesting too. The word hieroglyph, we're going to get into that, and we're going to check out some hieroglyphs here in just a minute too. But the word hieroglyph is related to the word hero, the hero, just like the heroes of old, the men of renown, superheroes and stuff, right? Gods, angels, beings from other worlds and stuff, beings with superpowers and stuff. So we have this circle in the sky with all of these little, what look like rays of light with hands attached to them, hands on the end of them, right? We're going to come back to Aten in just a minute. We're definitely going to check out some of these ancient Egyptian gods. Now, check it out. It says here, it shows you who brings you the studio. Centropolis. We've talked about the origin of the word polis. Polis means city. Centro means center. So the middle or the center city. Here is a picture of one of their little intros, Centropolis. As you can see, it's a huge mountain-like city right there in the middle, and what it represents symbolically is Mount Meru. Mount Meru is right at the middle of the world on many of the ancient maps, as we've talked about here on my channel so many times, and you can see that there's all these bridges that come off. Looks like maybe 4 bridges right there that sort of go from distant lands across this central lake or ocean or whatever that is, and they connect at Centropolis, or the center city. And this center city represents that island, that ancient hidden island at the middle of the world, at the center of the Arctic Circle on many of our ancient maps. And the buildings in the middle, they kind of resemble like a type of Oz, right? The great city of Oz in the middle with the lights shining out, right? These beams of light that shine out of the top. And that's why it represents Mount Meru, or the plasma volcano, as I call it too. So, brought to you by Mount Meru, essentially. And that brings us to the movie name, Stargate. So this whole movie is going to be about, symbolically, a gate in the sky where the stars are that opens up and allows for travel to other worlds, to other places and other realms, right? And that's what I talk about when we talk about the plasma apocalypse here on my channel. That's the only time that you can get out of the earth or to come into the earth, or to explore the fractalverse. And it says here, special creature effects were created by a guy named Patrick Tato Paulos, which is very interesting. I find these names, all the people that work in the movies, their stage names, the actors, even the people that do stuff like the special effects and stuff. Patrick or Pater means father. Ik, that suffix ix just means like little, so little father. Pater ik, and then Tato. Tato means of the Tet. The Tet is symbolically this right here. It's an ancient glyph of a circle with an X right in the middle, which is symbolic of the land at the North Pole on those ancient maps. So Tato means of the Tet, or of the center of the world. Paulos is essentially related to the word pole, or mighty pole, a strong pole, right? Which is that beam of light, or the tree of life that grows up out as plasma, exiting out of the plasma volcano, Mount Meru, Rupes Nigra, etc., right? So it's really interesting. And then they show you this. This is the first image that we really get. They show you some ancient Egyptian, like pharaoh or something. And at first you might just think it's nothing, right? This is just, they're just letting you know that it's going to be about Egypt or whatnot, right? So when we check this out, we're like, okay, well, so it's about Egypt. It's got a picture of some kind of pharaoh looking dude. But if we don't look into it, if we don't study, we don't know who this Egyptian looking dude is. This is actually a likeness of a real Egyptian pharaoh whose name was affectionately called Akhenaten, right? Akhenaten. Hey, Taurus, good to see you. Welcome, Taurus. Boom. High five. So Akhenaten, the pharaoh Egypt wanted to forget. One of the most, if not the most infamous pharaoh of all time was Akhenaten. I like his name too. I think these names are really interesting. Akhenaten was known to be the father of King Tut, or Tot, or Tet, as you could say, right? Just how we talked about. So here's sort of a little clip of the family tree. Up here you've got Akhenaten, or possibly even pronounced Ankh, as in that symbol of life. Ankh on Aten. Aten being that god that we just showed you at the beginning. And then Tut Ankh Amun. Right? Amun meaning the hidden, right? Tut is the Tet, or Toth. There's different pronunciations of that, right? And then Ankh. So the Ankh is the symbol of life. It's the tree of life, essentially. It's that Irminsul in ancient Saxon mythology. It's the world tree. It's the life force that comes up out of Mount Meru, right? And it comes up out of the Tet, or that land at the middle of the world. Now, whenever it's gone, whenever those beams of light retract and they go back into the earth, and we go through famine and plagues and hardships and lifespans shrink, and the energy in our world retracts and starts charging back into the depths of the world, then those lights are Amun. Those gods, those light forces, those beings, or whatever people see them as, are now hidden. They're gone. They're missing. So that's Tut Ankh Amun and Ankh On Aten. Here's a glyph. This is a really cool glyph. This is a little clip from a YouTube video I found of someone that's breaking down some different hieroglyphs and stuff. So up here you can see, let's go ahead and zoom in on this part right here. The name Akhenaten, right up here, giving praise to the Aten. The Aten is this symbol right here. So let's zoom in on that real quick. That's the first one that we looked at when we saw the little sun disk with the little rays with the little fingers or hands coming off of it, right? Now, some people believe, most people actually believe, that this just represents the sun, the point of focus that we see in the sky today. However, I have found in my research that we have had many versions of a sun, or many light sources that are up there in the sky, even different moons, different suns, and things like that. But the main one is the one that we see whenever those beams go back up, and those poles and pillars that are seen as holding up the sky and holding away the sky, that those things also reveal an opening up there in the sky, which is a stargate, which is a circular depressurization point for our atmosphere that blows a hole open in the sky and allows us to see the red light from the ionized hydrogen just beyond the limits of our sky, or the skyline itself, right? And then what happens is that the plasma comes down and reaches down, and that plasma is seen as being the fingers of some cosmic deity or something, or the hands of God that are reaching down into our world in order to bring life and change things and terraform the world, etc., right? So this is the glyph for Akhenaten. Over here, it's really more of an I sound, this sort of feather. It's an Eten, or like Eden, like the Garden of Eden almost. Eten, and then this right here is not pronounced. Okay, this is a glyph that just gives more context to what these three glyphs are actually referencing and what they're talking about, right? So this is the picture form of it. These are the actual letters for it. If you read them from left to right, or from left, this one up to the top and then down. All right, cool. So let's check this out. Let's go over here and look at his actual name in a cartouche. If you ever see in ancient Egyptian hieroglyphs, if you ever see something that's sort of in this sort of tombstone looking shape, sort of a long oval like that, that's usually a name. That's usually the name of somebody, right? So in this one, we're going to go down to the bottom and we're going to see that it says here, the spirit of Aten. So we have, if we start here with this gigantic bird, we're going to always read facing, or always read in the direction of the faces of any objects that you see, the front of any objects that you see. That's how you know which direction to read in hieroglyphics. So we would start here, we would read in this direction, this bird. So it would be Anna, and then that little retro 80s sun looking thing right there is like so it's Anna, and then Iten. So Anakin Iten. And then this right here is not said. That is the symbol for the sun disk. That's the true symbol for the sun disk. Even in modern, what do you call it? When people study the stars and astrology, right? So in astrology and stuff like that, when we write the symbol for the sun, it's a circle with a dot right there in the middle. That's the true symbol for the actual point of focus that's up there in the sky, giving us sunbeams and sun rays and stuff like that. So if you read it from here, I sort of drew some arrows so you can see one possible variation of writing it, the spirit of Aten. So the spirit is the Ankh, or the A-N-K, that the little waves, that's the letter N, it means life. It's sort of like water, basically. A-N-K, and then Iten, Anakaniten, or Akhenaten, as we would say in the modern vernacular. Now it says here about Pharaoh Akhenaten. As a pharaoh, Akhenaten was noted for abandoning Egypt's traditional polytheism, that means many gods, and introducing Atenism, or worship centered around Aten, right? Aten depends on how you look at it. I look at it as in the conditions in our world had changed so that people saw, different deities in the sky, or different lights, or different energetic forces that were in the sky, right? Sometimes they saw the world across, all kinds, all over the place, being beams of light that were shooting out from within the earth whenever we go through an electromagnetic reversal, and the light or the plasma actually emanates out of caves and volcanoes and stuff like that, and people would see those reaching up to the heavens, and they would worship their local gods, that those beams of light that were near to them, and ones that were far away, the different ones that they saw. They would describe them in the ways that they affected them locally with all that energy that's been introduced into their local lands, or how they acted, how they moved about up there in the fluid of the sky itself. But whenever all of those beams retracted, right, then we were left with like only a few skylights that are up there, like the moon and the sun and things like that. Now here's a picture of Akhenaten and his wife Nefertiti and their children as well. Let's take a closer look at this. This is really interesting because this movie is going to introduce us to the concept of aliens as being the ancient Egyptian gods. Now in here we have the Aten, or the Iten. And right in the middle, you can see that it's sort of a disc. It doesn't have a dot in the middle to represent the actual point of focus that we call the sun today. But it's a solar disk, it's a disk of light, it's a circle of light that has these little hands that reach out from it, and those hands usually are holding on to an Ankh, or the symbol for life force, or life that is being given to people, right? Now let's take a look at Akhenaten. Look at this dome. Look at this big old dome he has, right? Now, I feel that it's, there's a lot of myths and legends that talk about alien beings from other worlds that have elongated heads, huge, gigantic domes, huge skulls, big heads, right? And even humanity adored the gods themselves so much that different tribes of humans around the world tried to force their children to grow these elongated skulls and these elongated heads. Look at his child, right? Look at their bodies. They look altogether unhuman. Not, I mean, they look at like humanish, sort of a humanoid form. Look how tiny this one is right here, right? That's a tiny little baby creature. So it stands to reason that these Akhenaten and people, if they were aliens, that they would have been gigantic or maybe giant in nature, right? So it's a possibility that they were aliens or from another world themselves. But that's what Akhenaten is famous for. He's famous for making it so that people stopped worshiping so many different various gods as being the god, and he introduced basically a form of monotheism, mono meaning one and theism meaning God, right? So one God, the concept of one God. And that was not very popular at the time in Egypt. And as soon as he left Egypt in whatever way that he left, if he died or whatnot, right? As soon as he left, his son, King Tut or King Tutankhamun, or Tutankhamun, or however you want to say it, he brought back polytheism, or the multiple gods. Why? Was it because he just personally wanted to, or was it because multiple gods showed up again around that time whenever he took his rule back, right? So here's an example of the Aten up here in the corner. You can kind of see the Aten, and you can see, let me see if I can zoom into it more so we can see the glyphs. So here are the glyphs. You can kind of make these out here. Boom. All right. So this is the Itin, or Aten, right? And then here is the symbol that is not pronounced that lets you know it is related to the sun. I also want to point out, if this is the sun up in the sky right there, it's red, right? I also want to point out this one too. A lot of people see that this symbol, especially on like Horus and different gods, that they take for being the glyph for the sun. But we already said the glyph for the sun is a circle with a dot right there in the middle of it, right? This one looks like it would be something like a light in the sky, but it has a snake wrapped around it, right? Usually the snake represents plasma whenever we go back far enough and we look at these things. Here's another one of Akhenaten and his family. This is the same one that we saw earlier, just kind of broken down. This is the sun god Aten right there. The sun god Aten, who's raised in with the Ankh symbol for life, or the Anak, or this is also the root for like Anakin Skywalker, the Anunnaki, various types of similar and related words, right? King Akhenaten with his big old dome right there. This is the cartouche. So this is what a cartouche looks like. Usually it's a little circle, and then at the bottom it's got like a line across it or whatever, so it can stand up. And it says the living spirit of the Aten. So he is filled with the living spirit of whatever is coming off of this. This Ankh, this life-giving spirit, comes out of this circle up in the sky, and that's what he was worshiping and had his family members worship as well. Look at those domes. Big old huge domes. Here's his wife, Queen Nefertiti, wearing her huge hat. I believe the reason they wore these conical shaped hats as well, from wizards to witches to the ancient pharaohs of old, all of these people wore these giant conical hats to fit their giant conical heads. I mean, that's pretty simple, right? If we look at it from more of like a childlike mentality, that the gods, or those beings who came down from the skies, that they had these huge elongated skulls and heads, and they had to wear these Phrygian caps and skull caps and like wizard conical hats and stuff like that. So we emulated that. We saw that they wore those types of things and that they were intelligent. Far more intelligent than we were, that they had access to futuristic forms of technology and stuff, that they were wise and patient and ruled over the world and over mankind. So we emulated that, right? I call it the Elven standard of beauty. We just copied what the gods looked like and how they dressed and stuff. You can see this on the Dark Crystal is a good example of how the people dressed up like the Skeksis and they wanted to sort of emulate them. But it's done all over the place. So, for example, if we wanted a child in school to be smarter or more intelligent because they were acting up and they weren't really behaving, or they were being stupid in class, they would be set in the corner with a conical hat on their head, not to humiliate them, but in the hopes that the conical hat would somehow impart intelligence to them. And that was called the dunce cap. Now, this right here about Akhenaten says, let me go ahead and make this a little bit bigger here. It says the culture shift away from traditional religion was reversed after his death. Akhenaten's monuments were dismantled and hidden. His statues were destroyed. and his name was excluded from lists of rulers compiled by later pharaohs. This is huge. This is a huge mark in history. This is not typical. Traditional religious practice was gradually restored, that of polytheism, notably under his close successor Tutankhamun, or Tutankhamun, who changed his name from Tutankhaten. You see how there's the Aten in there, just like his father had? Tutankhaten, or the Ankh from the place of the Tut that gives life, or the Aten, early in his reign. So Tutankhamun's name used to be Tutankhaten, which is interesting. So he changed his name. Why? Because maybe the conditions in the world changed, and those gods that they worshipped and saw also changed, and they wanted to pay homage to those gods and those deities and those energetic forces. Now, when some dozen years later, rulers without clear rights of succession from the 18th dynasty founded a new dynasty, they discredited Akhenaten and his immediate successors and referred to Akhenaten as the enemy, or that criminal, in the archival records. This is such drama, like in ancient history this is the drama of all of ancient Egyptian history. This is the most craziest thing that ever happened with various pharaohs. They've all got interesting stories and lineages and stuff, but this one is really of particular interest to force an entire nation all of a sudden, out of nowhere, to just worship one particular deity up there in the sky. And then the moment that he's dead and gone, to reintroduce polytheism all over the place and to strike his name from the records, right? To erase his glyphs. Those glyphs, hieroglyph means basically pictures that are carvings in rock, right? So to erase those, you have to just chisel away the name. You have to, man, that had to be a pretty serious offense, right? So here's another example of various deities in ancient Egypt, starting at the top. At the top, you can see up here, we've got Aten, right? Which is this. Also is one and the same, or very much related to Ptah, right? Ptah. And then also Ra, or the solar disk, Ra. There's different pronunciation of all of these, right? Ptah is sort of where we get like Peter, father, ancient words like that, Pater, etc. Stuff like that. And then over here we got Osiris, or Osiris, or Sirius. We're going to talk about Osiris in a bit too. I was kind of disappointed Osiris did not make an appearance in this movie that I saw. However, we're still going to talk about Osiris because he's one of my favorites. You can see he's blue. He's bluish green, right? And I believe there's a good reason for that. And look at his hat. Look at the crown that Osiris wears up here, right? You see how it's got like these two beams that shoot up on either side, right? Well, it's kind of hard for you to see because I can't zoom in all the way, but there you go right there, right? And then he also has this little sort of flagella and this hook symbolism. All of these things, when you pay attention to these ancient gods, the color, the symbols, the hats, all of these things represent the actual energetic god or energetic force that is represented and personified by the caricature of the human, okay? That what appears to be a human is not always a human. Usually it's actually the symbols themselves, like the rod, right? So the blue beam that shoots up out of Mount Meru, etc. Wait, let's see what else we got here. We got Hathor, Isis. So Isis also has a sort of throne seat on the head. Amun has these two pillars as well on either side. You can see the goddess Nut. You sort of see her face up there. Now, Nut, this is her hand. She covers the earth, the entire earth. Nut is the sky goddess. She is a physical being or a physical object that is up there that many people refer to as the firmament, or the dome of the sky, the dome of the world, the rim of the world, the ceiling of our earth, basically. And you can see that there are stars on the other side representing space or what lies beyond. And then down here at the bottom, you would have like another god, many other gods as well. We'll get into those in a bit. All right, cool. So we start off the movie in ancient Egypt. I love how like we're already deep. We're already deep. We haven't even gotten into the movie yet, right? Just showed us one picture and I'm like, oh my God, let's do a whole study. All right. Anyway, so the three pyramids in Egypt, right? The Great Pyramid specifically is the one that we'll be focusing on. Lots of interesting stuff to go over. But do you notice how this clip has the picture of the circle directly above the central pyramid there? Symbolically, if you look at this through the lens of the plasma apocalypse, we have the anode, the cathode, and Mount Meru with the opening or the depressurization point right there in the middle, right? How the pyramids were made, I'm not going to get into a whole lot of speculation because I want to get right into like the movie, and the movie's, goes a bit beyond that. So you guys can feel free to talk about how you think the pyramids were made and stuff in the chat, but there's a lot of interesting stuff coming up. Now, we meet. There's this archaeological dig that's happening, Indiana Jones style, about 100 years ago, and they pull up these cover stones, these stones that cover up the Stargate that we're going to see. Now, you can see there that it's a circle and another circle. So 2 circles, and then from the middle circle, there's light emanating out of that. Now, what this is a terrestrial version of what we will see and what people have seen in the past up in the sky. It's the all-seeing eye, basically. You're just looking at it two-dimensionally on the ground, right? It's a cartoonification of it, but it belongs up in the sky. This is what people saw up in the sky. They saw 2 circles, a great circle and a smaller one, both of them being red, and it looked like an evil eye or an eye of God, which is the depressurization point in a little mini dome at the top of the firmament up there. And the plasma that wraps around our world when we go through an energetic neutral point comes in. So that light comes in and emanates from that central sun or that central disk. All right, so we got some guys who are looking at it, and they're saying these are the cover stones that cover it up. This is the actual Stargate, and if we take a closer look at it, symbolically, if it represents the depressurization point, which is just a hole, okay, or a black hole, you could say, up in our sky, a circle, the ring. This is all the ring symbolism throughout all the different movies, like The Arrival, the actual movie The Ring, right? Where weird things come out of it. Strange things come out of this because it is a portal or a window or an opening in a physical object, which is our sky or our firmament or the dome above us. And then all these little ropes, symbolically, they would represent the plasma or the snakes of Medusa's head as all this plasma comes in, these fire worms and stuff that drop down in from outer space, so-called. All right, cool. So now we go to the modern day, which is really like the 90s. We go to modern day. We got this lady that's wearing all black right here. Anytime you see a woman that's wearing all black in the movies, oftentimes she will represent the mourning goddess, the goddess of mourning, not the mourning like daytime, but somebody who is sad, somebody who has lost something, usually a child or a loved one or something like that, which harkens back to various myths and legends about goddesses who have a son that is a savior type that dies. And so they dress in all black, and that all black represents Mount Meru. Okay. It represents the divinity, the goddess, the female energetic force that retracts back into that black mountain, Rupus Nigra, and covers itself up in black, which is why we wear black when when somebody dies or we're in mourning or whatever. So we're going to go to a symposium, which I just actually got back from a symposium. I was invited to be a speaker at a symposium. It was pretty cool. The Old Kingdom and the Fourth Dynasty. So the Old Kingdom, the Fourth Dynasty, this is whenever the Great Pyramids were built, allegedly. When this is like the time of the pyramids, they would say. Now, there's a speaker up there, and the woman in black, it's hard to see her right there, but the speaker is saying, when is the academic community going to accept the fact that the pharaohs of the Fourth Dynasty did not build the Great Pyramid? So now this guy's up there giving a presentation, and he's coming out, he's talking to all these mainstream people, okay? Archaeologists, academics of all kinds, professors, people who would financially back him and stuff. And he's got these radical ideas. And he's saying that the pyramid, the Great Pyramid, was not built by the traditional pharaoh Khufu, who they say, academics, mainstream academics, they just attribute it to him. Which there's not a lot of evidence for that whatsoever. There's literally one piece of evidence, and we're going to cover that right now. So the audience starts murmuring. They're like, oh, I can't believe you just said that, right? And then he says, look. Inside, this is the speaker right here. He says, inside of the Great Pyramid, there are no writings whatsoever. Isn't that a bit strange? Just in and of itself, in a land that's just filled with carvings and hieroglyphs and writings and pictures and drawings that seem to really document and write down their history and the things that they have been so proud of as a type of world ruling empire, right? He says there's no writings inside of the Great Pyramid whatsoever. Now, some heckler in the crowd, because there's always a Judas, some heckler goes, well, you left out the fact that Colonel Weiss discovered the quarrymen's inscriptions. Okay, so somebody, this is what they call scuttlebutt. Okay, this is gossip. This is rumors and speculation. Okay, So there's this big to-do. I'll explain to you what he's talking about. Okay, there's a quarryman. A quarryman is somebody who goes to a quarry, a rock quarry, and they dig out rocks. Okay, so that there was somebody who was in charge of the slaves who were digging out rocks, allegedly, if that's how they were made, right? And he says that the quarryman found an inscription of Khufu's name, Pharaoh, King Khufu, within the pyramid. So there was this writing on paper, okay, that was left inside of the pyramid. Just happened to be, some writing about what they had used to build the pyramids, allegedly, and it had King Khufu's name on it. That's what he's talking about. So the speaker says, yeah, well, that discovery was a fraud. That was BS, right? Now, the second he says it's a fraud, all the people are like, oh, God, really? He's going to say that it's a fraud because it's been accepted by modern academics, because it's the only piece of evidence that they can use to prove that this king named Khufu built this huge pyramid. And also they will tell you that the Great Pyramid was just built as a tomb. Okay. Like it's just a gigantic house to put a dead person in, you know what I mean? And his wife and his family or whatever. I have other theories that make way more sense, and we're going to go over those too. Now let's talk about this gossip about, the inscription of Khufu's name on a piece of paper found inside of the Great Pyramid. It says here, still further evidence that the dynastic Egyptians did not construct the Great Pyramid of Giza may be found in sediments surrounding the base of the monument, in legends regarding watermarks on the stones halfway up its sides, and salt incrustations found within. Okay, let me rephrase that. So when they about 100 years ago, a little more than 100 years ago, people were excavating. They were looking at the Great Pyramid. There was a lot of sand around the base and stuff that they were digging out, and they were still discovering different secrets that it held. One of the things that they discovered was that there were watermarks halfway up the pyramid, that it just had a watermark. Just like if you go to a lake or a river and the water levels drop and you can see on the dam or whatever where the waters used to be, those are halfway up the Great Pyramid. And when they went inside, they found salt crusted on the inner walls of the pyramid, almost 2 inches thick. That's interesting. So silt sediments rising to 14 feet all around the base of the pyramid contain many seashells and fossils that have been radiocarbon dated to be nearly 12,000 years old. Now, I have a problem with modern radiocarbon dating because I don't believe that they do their math correctly, and I don't believe that they have taken into account how quickly entropy exponentially advances as we move forward in time. But they did it up to 12,000 years old. It says these sediments that were found could have been deposited in such great quantities only by major sea flooding. So the flood, the great deluge, which means that if that's true, that the pyramids were built before the last great cataclysm, the great deluge, right? Maybe even built purposefully in order to survive a deluge that somebody knew was coming, which is actually a prophecy of the sons of Set and Adam and Eve's children. Some of the more esoteric writings, not really biblical writings, but more of like Gnostic writings. They talk about how Adam and Eve were given prophecies about how the world went through cyclical cataclysms, just like how we talk about, and that his sons were instructed to build these monuments, one to withstand a great flood and another to withstand a great fire, right? Or a great conflagration. And inside of those buildings, they were to contain libraries of information about the true history of our world and our past. Now, in support of this ancient flood scenario, mysterious legends and records tell of watermarks that were clearly visible on the limestone casing stones of the Great Pyramid before those stones were removed by the Arabs, allegedly. These watermarks were halfway up the sides of the pyramid themselves. So let's talk about these limestone casings. Basically, you know how like it's sort of a step pyramid? Well, at the base of the pyramid, you can see that they have still a few of them left. They had an outer casing that made it smooth so that it wasn't steps at all, that it was just a smooth slide all the way down, basically. Hey, Farida, thank you so much for your donation. I appreciate you. All right. Now, this says, when the Great Pyramid was first opened, or reopened, incrustations of salt an inch thick were found inside of it. While much of this salt is known to be natural exudation from the stones of the pyramid, so the stones exude salt, I guess, chemical analysis has shown that some of the salt has a mineral content consistent with salt from the ocean, from the sea salt inside of the Great Pyramid stuck to the walls. Isn't this interesting, right? Which is also super interesting if you consider what the Great Pyramid, what the purpose of the real purpose, not holding a dead person, okay? What the real purpose behind the Great Pyramid would have been, which may be, I believe, electromagnetic in nature that adds to lifespans and does other things too. Salt would act as a conductor of electricity, right? These salt incrustations found at a height corresponding to the water level marks that are left on the exterior were further evidence that at some point in time in distant past, the pyramid was submerged halfway up to its height. That's interesting. All right, now I'm going to read this part. Let me make this a little bigger for us all. It says here, Pharaoh Khufu himself left no indication whatsoever that he built the Great Pyramid of Giza. You would think that if you built the greatest, most huge, one of the 7 wonders of the world, that somebody somewhere would have written it down and left it. It would be all over the place, right? No, they'd find no evidence of that. He did, however, claim to have done repair work on the structure. Okay, that's reasonable, right? If it's already pre-existing and, you want to brag about how you fixed it up a little bit. Okay, I get that. On the nearby inventory stela, dating back to about 1500 BC, but showing evidence of having been copied from a far older stela contemporaneous with the 4th dynasty, Khufu tells of discoveries made while clearing away the sands of the pyramid, of his dedication of the monument to Isis, and of his building the 3 small pyramids for himself, his wife, and his daughters next to the Great Pyramid, right? So he does admit that he built some smaller pyramids right there next to the Great Pyramid, right? And you can easily see those. I actually have a picture of them in my room. You can tell they look way different than the Great Pyramid. They're constructed differently, right? They're beautiful, but they're different. Now, regarding the red ochre paint marks that are found within the Great Pyramid, most hieroglyph experts now believe these to be forgeries that were left by the discoverer. So this is where the gossip comes in. Somebody discovered these red hieroglyph painting hieroglyphs, okay, which are not true hieroglyphs at all. That they were forgeries that were left by the guy who discovered them, conveniently named Richard Howard Weiss, which is the same guy who is mentioned in the movie, rather than being quarry inscriptions left by the original builders. Howard Weiss was under pressure to equal the discoveries of his rival, the Italian explorer Caviglia, who had found inscriptions in some of the tombs around the Great Pyramid. So you'll also find this within modern academics, right? They fight for prestige. Okay, essentially. Somebody finds some great find, and some other explorer or professor or, inventor or whatever, they always have they get in their feelings about it because the other person is getting notoriety and fame and money and all sorts of stuff. So sometimes it happens, especially within the area of academics, that they make things up, that they lie, that they say, oh, look what I found over here. Like I found a whole dinosaur right here. I ran right into this dinosaur. Check it out, or whatever. They just make stuff up. And then they have forgeries and stuff. This was common. This was much more commonplace, maybe back 100 or 200 years ago. Modern researchers now suspect in the battle for one-upsmanship, Howard Weiss sought to overshadow his rival and gain renewed support for his own projects, but with a similar, more spectacular discovery. By forging the quarry inscriptions that were made inside of the Great Pyramid. In other words, no firm evidence in any way connects the pyramids of Giza, of the Giza Plateau, to the dynastic Egyptians. That means that the time that modern academics teaches your children and all others around the world tells you this is when they were built, that there's no proof for that at all, anywhere. Interesting. Now, that's exactly what he's saying up there. So this is me up on stage. This is me doing YouTube, basically. And this is all the rest of the world. This is not all of you in the Good Vibe Tribe, but this is everybody else in the whole academics and on the whole rest of the world, all regular people, right? And they're like, oh, I'm out of here, bro. So he's still talking. He says, also, the Sphinx is dated back to a much earlier pyramid. And then pretty much everybody disappears. And he's like, was there a lunch or something that everybody, like, they don't want to hear it, right? They're not interested in going down alternative routes. They're not interested in the fringe. They're not interested in anything other than what their superiors above at the top of the pyramid have passed on through, the people underneath them and the people underneath them and the people underneath them. So basically all of your modern academic education is just regurgitated crap that's made up from the person at the top. Okay. That's why it's so important to do independent research. All right, so the professor, he's basically out of a job. He's done. But the lady in black, she's like, hey, I have a job for you. She was there when the Stargate was found when she was a child. She's like, I have a job for you. So Mount Meru, talking to the investigative truth seeker, right, is calling to him. Right? Some of you know what that's about. So she has a job for him. He says, really? All right, cool. I mean, what kind of a job? And also you'll notice that there's a storm going on around them. You'll see the storm symbolism quite often. Okay, the storm symbolism is when a huge change is about to happen in the movie, because when we experience a world storm, a huge change happens to us. He says, what kind of a job? She says, ancient Egyptian hieroglyphs. All right, cool. So now we're going to move to the military guy. This military guy, he's going to get reactivated. He's a veteran. He's going to get reactivated by the military. They're going to call him back. He happens to be wearing blue, have blue eyes. We're going to talk about his name, etc., representing the blue beam or the light of truth, etc., and how he's being recalled, or that those blue beams, those gods of old, if you want to call them that, those energetic forces from inside of the earth are going to be recalled. They're going to reappear, basically, right? And these people in the military off to the side, they say, we're from General West's office. So he's being called back to West, to the West, which is very interesting, which is another name for Osiris. Osiris, I'll show you in a bit. He says, we're here to inform you that you've been reactivated. So he's sad. He's in mourning. He's in loss, just like the lady in black, because this all represents our modern world, the time without the light, the time without the energy, the time without the magic, right? So that's why they're showing you somebody who represents the blue beam or whatever, by the color blue, being sad and in mourning, just like the lady in black. Let's check out Osiris. I want him to be in this movie, so I'm going to put Osiris back into this movie. Now, they said they're calling him back to Colonel West's office, so he's being recalled to the West, the guy who represents blue. So if we look at Osiris, I'm going to skip some of the stuff up top. I want to focus on some of his common names or epithets. Now, if you check this out, I'm going to zoom into this. Some of the things that Osiris was called was foremost of the Westerners. Well, that's interesting, because in the ancient languages, the West was not a sideways going around the earth forever in a circle. West was pointed at the middle. West was towards the North Pole, the entrance to the underworld. West was down, okay? West was going into the earth. And the biggest place where you could go into the West was at the middle of the world. The biggest entrance was Mount Meru, or that huge cavernous system that opens up in the middle of the world that we call Mount Meru and the plasma volcano, basically, right? The tree of life, or the trunk of the tree of life. So he was the foremost of the Westerners, this blue god, this blue beam or bluish green god or whatever, right? Foremost of the Westerners, lord of the underworld. Well, yeah, because he comes from the underworld. That's where he is right now. That's exactly where Osiris is right now. Osiris is dead and sleeping down in the underworld, right? Down there in Sheol, down there in the Underdark, or however you want to call it. Thank you so much, Farida. Appreciate you. Is also called he who is permanently benign and youthful, because this god Osiris represents the fountain of youth. Also affectionately known as the beautiful one, the Lord of love, King of the living, the eternal Lord. And then, check this last one out. The Lord of the pillar of continuity. The Lord of the pillar. This represents the pillar, the light of life that shoots up out of Mount Meru, Osiris. Important symbols, here you go. So some of the symbols are the crook and the flail, the Atef crown, ostrich feathers. The ostrich feather is really interesting one too. That represents the feather that people are weighed against, that their souls are weighed against, which is basically the plasma that shoots up and feathers out in the sky. It looks like creates a bird shape, a thunderbird, the phoenix, all that stuff. Ostrich feathers. And a jed, or a pillar. So Osiris is literally represented by a pillar, or a beam, or a pole, or a rod, etc., right? A column. Foremost of the Westerners, Lord of the Pillar. Interesting. All right, so we're going to go back to this military installation. So the colonel, or the veteran guy with the blue eyes, right? He's going to go back to this military installation. Also, the job of reading the hieroglyphs is in this exact military installation. Now, it says Creek Mountain, Colorado. This is not Creek Mountain, Colorado. This is NORAD. Okay, I'm gonna tell you right now. I'll show you a picture of it here in a bit. All right, so inside you see those same cover stones. Take a look at this. Take a look at it's hard to see. It's hard to make out, but in the middle, we automatically recognize, we just learned what a cartouche was, right? So if you have these strange symbols or hieroglyphs or whatnot, right? Carvings, and you have that oval that has like sort of a little bottom attachment to it. Sometimes it's a line. This is a cartouche, which means this in the middle is a name. Now look on either side. I don't know if you can see what's on either side, but you can see this is that same goddess. She's sideways. Nut. This is the sky goddess on one side over here, right? Sort of doing some Pilates or some yoga or something, right? And there's a Geb down there. That's the Lord of the land. So the sky and the land on each side. So there's one over here and there's one over here. And right in the middle, there seems to be this beam or rod type of an image right there in the middle. So we've got this symbol, we've got this symbol, and then a beam splitting those two symbols. It reminds me of the god Janus, right? The god Janus, the two-faced one. Now, the important thing about Janus is usually it's his face, just like Medusa, okay? Their body doesn't matter. It's their face that matters. Janus's face is really what matters in those images that he holds onto, the symbols. He's got a rod and some other stuff too, but look at his face. This is why this is important, right? Look at the beard and the hair, how they connect, and they make this DC sort of symbolism, or they make this sort of stick figure that branches out and has legs and arms that hold up the sky, etc. This sort of imagery, right? And then one eye on one side and one eye on the other side. That's why oftentimes Janus is shown with the profile, right? Not shown from other angles usually, but usually this profile, because it creates this exact same type of an image that we saw on the cartouche or on either side of the cartouche, because it's split by that blue beam in the middle, which creates the body of the stick figure, or the ancient squatterman glyph, right? The petroglyph. Also gives us DC, where this whole DC symbolism, DC comics, Washington, DC, all of this DC imagery harkens back to just these simple glyphs, these simple shapes that are inverted of one another. DC, basically, right? Stands for the District of Columbia, or the place of the column. It's exactly what it means. It's exactly what it translates to. I know some people will interpret the word Columbia as being like, oh, it means a dove. No, it doesn't. Doves dove means to dive. It means to come down. Okay. And the place where the column is the place where stuff floats down into our world. Angels, or you could look at them like pigeons, or, whatever. Right. Also the Hurley symbol too. So lots of different symbolism going on here. That's all very similar. This is the cartouche. As you can see at the bottom of the cartouche, we have a type of Mount Meru with the beam shooting up from it. That's going to come into play here in just a minute too. This glyph also looks like a volcano with like a beam coming out of it, like the old Mount Meru pictures that we see in Buddhism and stuff like that. All right, now we're going to jump into some actual hieroglyphs, okay, or hieroglyphs. So this guy right here, he walks in and instantly sees that there's something wrong with the translation on the chalkboard, right? Which all the official people, do I have the official people? Okay, I'll have them here in a minute. They're like, wow, we've been working on this for years. Who is this dude just coming in thinking he knows it, right? Because he comes in with a childlike mindset, with a mind of creativity, right? And he sees it, he brings a fresh perspective. And that's what's needed in order to figure out what these ancient words are talking about. So let's do it, right? This is why I love this dude. I see myself in this dude so much. Face Jack, what's up, Face Jack? Good to see you. All right, one sec. All right, so he comes up here, he erases stuff. He's like, oh, this is all wrong. No. And then he points to this glyph right here. He says, this is interesting. This is a curious word, huh? Geba. And he points it out. So let's break this down. Let's check it out. This is the exact same hieroglyphs that are on the chalkboard in front of him. This is all of it right here in front of you. So I'm going to expand it for a moment because I know it's an interesting thing to check out. I'm not sure if I can get all the way to the top here. Let me see. Yes, I can. Okay, cool. So this is, we're going to read from left to right. You know how we know that? Because we look at this bird right here and the face of the bird is right there. The bird's pointing this way. So we're going to read in the opposite direction. We're going to read towards the face of the characters in the glyphs. Okay. So this first part right here, it's basically talking about millions of years. These three lines indicate like a plural, many, stuff like that. I want to get to the part that he's pointing at though, Geba, which is written in different ways depending on dialect and pronunciation and accents and stuff. So this right here says keba'u, which is really interesting. So if we check it out, we start with this K, which is a slope. Okay, that's exactly what it is. These are just like reading emojis. Okay, it's not hard at all. Super not hard. You just put the emojis together, you get context, you get a sentence, you can understand it better. And sometimes they actually give you a picture. Like here's a picture of the actual word of what all these letters mean, right? So, geba. We got ba, which is the foot there. We've got this sort of ch sound back here, which is, we've talked about this glyph before. In Egyptian, it's the exact same in Phoenician, right? It's the chet. We talk about that chet. Remember the kaka, the chicken sound? Which is the 88, or it's the 8th letter in the Phoenician alphabet is the chet, or the ket, or k sound, you could say. And then the oo right here, represented by this little chick, bird. And then we've got some other ones over here. We're going to break them all down right now. Pata. See that PT? PT, like PT Barnum comes to mind for some reason. Patak, PT, right there. All right, so let's check out these 3 right here. This is exactly what he's looking at. Whenever, hold on, let me this is so fun. All right, so look at it, right? On his glyph over here, here is the slope, right? This is where we're starting, all right? So we're starting at the bottom, right here where this slope is. Then we're going to go to the foot. Then we're going to go to the chet, which is obviously plasma. And then the chicken or whatever that is. We're going to show you all of these. We're just going to break down this. I'm not going to break down all of it. That would take forever, okay? But we're going to break down this one, and you're going to learn a little bit about how to read ancient hieroglyphs. All right, so these are the ones in question, the same ones that were on the chalkboard. Let's jump right into it. We've got the k sound. Is that what that was? Right? The k, or it could be a g. It's just a guttural, really. So sometimes that's a k, sometimes it's a g, etc. And it means slope of a hill. So it means earth that goes up, okay? Or it goes into a slope or a tower or an incline, okay? So keep that in mind. These are like little emojis. We got to put them all together to figure out what it's trying to say. So we've got a slope of a hill. Then we've got a foot. Okay, that's the next glyph right there is this foot, which means a place. Just like when we were talking about breaking down the ancient letter Gimel in Hebrew and Phoenician, it's a foot as well. It's this exact same picture, and it means a place, or more specifically, a destination, right? And when you've got 2 of them together, it implies walking or going somewhere, right? But one of them just implies a destination or a place, basically. Right? So the first one is a slope. The second one is a place. The third one is a twisted wick. A wick is what's at the top of a candle, and it's all twisted like that. Why? Well, what it really represents is a twisted light, right? But they can't just draw a light. How do you draw light, right? You have to draw the wick, which implies light on the top of the candle, but it's twisted light. Right? Which is exactly what happens when the plasma shoots up out of Mount Meru, the sloped, steep, inclined mountain, right? Or the place of the mountain, which is exactly what we're reading right here, right? That has that light that shoots up out of it. A twisted wick. Now, right here it says possibly ancestral or related to the proto-Sinaitic, which means before Mount Sinai. Chet, the exact symbol for chet, just like we talked about, right? Chet or het or chet, you could say too, chet. But more accurately, chet is the 8th letter of the Semitic abjads, including the Phoenician chet, which looks like a little ladder symbol. It also looks like the number 8, just like a square number 8, right? The Hebrew chet, etc., and so on and so forth, right? All right, and then we got the little chick at the end, the little quail, little bird. And the little bird just means oo. It's the W, it's the U, etc. And in ancient Egyptian, it's used to make words plural. It means more than one. So, more than one what? Let's take another look at it, shall we? Right? A hill, or a steep hill, or a steep mound of earth, an incline, right? So I'm going to call that a mountain, just to make it simple, okay? A mountain and a place, or the place of the mountain. The place of the mountain of light, which is what this represents right here, this wick, right? So the place of the mountain of light, this light also means boundary. So the place of the boundary, plural, boundaries. The place of the boundaries of the mountain, or the place on the earth where we are, where light comes out and acts as an actual boundary. These are known as the Pillars of Hercules. That were boundaries at the westernmost ends of the earth. As far as you can get on the earth towards the middle before you go into the earth and go west, because east is up and west is down. Phew, buddy, isn't that interesting? And then let's check out the next one. See this one, next one right here? This is totally different. So this is all sort of one word, and it's plural. Okay, so it means the place of the lights of the mountains. Okay, or the place where the mountains have light that come out of them, acting as boundaries, or the pillars of Hercules. And then this one right here, Kaaba, is all of these together. And this glyph, if we take a look at it, is a water jar with a rack, or it's water coming out of it. And it means clean, basically. It's a word that means clean. So this is an adjective that is describing this plural word off to the side. It means the place of the lights that come out of the mountain is a clean place, the clean place of the lights that come out of the mountain, or the place where one goes to become clean, the fountain of youth, basically. All right, now after that, we've got this glyph up here. This is really interesting. I would really like you to pay attention to this one. It's very easy to figure out what it means. This is the ceiling of our world. This underneath represents the dome shape, okay, or the sky. This glyph means sky. That's what it means. This one down here means earth, but specifically mountains, and even more specifically, foreign land. 3 mountains in a row, which would be Meru, Anode, Cathode, the foreign lands, where the foreigners come from, where the strange people come from, who go to Mount Meru. They stay there for so long that they become an altogether different tribe, a mixed tribe of various nations and races and stuff, who all stay at the middle islands, those fantastic islands. And then everybody else in the southern portions of the world, or exterior portions of the world, they have survived on their own, sort of becoming, I mean, they're heathen people to each other, okay? But they become altogether different. It's really interesting. So anode, cathode, etc. 3 hills. So that's the glyph for that, and it means hill country or foreign land. Hill country, those who come from the hill country are called pag-ons, or those of the pag, or those of the hook, those of the sky hook, those of the pillar that connects the earth to the heavens, okay? The pagans, basically, right? Tartarians, pagans, the Tot, the Tet, those of the Tet. I was just studying Tartaria, that's why I mentioned that one. But anyways, they have all different types of names, okay? These are the lost tribes that are spread out amongst the world today. And here's what it looks like. I just wanted to go back to that chalkboard writing, and I want to show you one more chance. I know people like to really check it out and take a good, strong look at it, right? You can notice some of these already, like we've kind of covered, like you can see and point out the sun disk. So this is something that indicates it's referring to the sun, or a light in the sky. This one's interesting because you can see the che. Now I'm freestyling now, okay? But look, chet and chet, that's 88 basically. Na chet chet, right? That's super interesting. And then you literally have like this that looks like the Roman numeral 2 right there. All right, so let's read the actual translation of what he's looking at on his chalkboard. For 1,000,000 years in the sky, in this sky, Ra, or Re, right? The sun, or the light of the world, or the light of the sky. Let me start over. For 1,000,000 years in the sky, this Ra in the sun disk, by his sealed and his burial. So he was buried in the sky, just like Cthulhu, just like so many different cosmic deities that are up there waiting, and they're not allowed into our world. They're sleeping, they're meditating, they're buried up there in the sky for all time to eternity. Now, this is a huge mistranslation in various works, okay? Various religions, various languages and stuff. The word that is interpreted meaning forever does not typically mean forever, okay? It means for an age, or for an ever, for an eon, for an age, not forever without in, forever and ever, like, beginning and in, alpha and omega, circular, looping, consecutive, never stopping. That's not what it means. Typically it means for an extremely long period of time, which is an age, which you can mark that when the beams appear to when the beams retract, those inner earth beings, right? Or these cycles, these electromagnetic pole reversals that we go through. Those are epochs, those are ages, those are evers, or however you want us to call it, right? Or the inverse, from when they retract to when they show up again. That is an age, basically. All time to eternity, his gate of the stars. Down here at the bottom, his gate of the stars, or his Stargate. So Ra, this cosmic deity, is locked away. That represents evil, by the way. Locked away in the sky, up there, buried in the sky. So there's something physical keeping him on the other side of the sky, right? Which is this red plasma, the evil eye, right? The evil sun disk or whatever. All right, now we get back to the movie. I hope that was fun. That was fun for me. I hope you guys enjoyed that. Man, I love learning new stuff. All right, so he says, well, so why is the military, because now the military is coming in here, right? Why is the military so interested in 5,000-year-old Egyptian tablets? Why would they be indeed, right? Why is the military, our military, the United States military, every military of the world, why are they all so interested? Look, you can even see that glyph. Now you know what that glyph right there is, right? 3 hills, the pagan land, the foreign land. Now you know what that is. How interesting. Anyways, why is the military so interested in ancient writings? Why would the military, of all people? I mean, you would think that like museum representatives and scholars, but why the military? Interesting. What is our military really for, right? That's a question I would have you ask yourself. Now, this guy comes up, this colonel or whatever, and he says, my report says 10,000 years. Now check this out. Here's the independent researcher who says 5,000 years. Here's the government entity, who says 10,000. There's a huge discrepancy in their calculations of time of how old these writings are, right? Now, if we look at the definition for entropy is when things break down over time and how fast they break down over time. It says a thermodynamic quantity. So thermodynamic basically is a fancy way of changing energy. It just means changing energy that changes. So a thermodynamic quantity representing the unavailability of a system's thermal energy for conversion into mechanical work. Often interpreted as the degree of disorder or randomness in the system. The second law of thermodynamics says that entropy always increases with time. Exponential entropy, okay? Not steadily increasing, but exponentially increasing. That's the part that they're missing, I believe. All right, so let me break this down. A thermodynamic quantity, I hate technical speak, don't you? Right? A thermodynamic quantity, so how much energy is changing, that represents the unavailability of a system's thermal energy for conversion into mechanical work. All that means is it represents how much life force is adding to the life of an object, essentially, okay? So they try to calculate how much life force an object has and how much it's adding to the life of an object or to the vitality of something or to the cellular structure of something, right? So whenever you have energy that is like, I don't know what I'm holding with my hands here. Like I'm holding like a jar full of energy, I guess, right? Let's say I have a jar full of energy, right? Entropy would be how quickly that battery loses power, okay? Or if the battery is our world or a cell or anything, entropy is the study of how quickly it degrades, how quickly it loses power. Our world is going through our world is in an entropic state or a state of entropy right now. It's in a fallen state because it is charging. Our world itself is responsible for all of the bad things that are happening in our world today, which is why people go through mourning and, all dressing in black and stuff like that. And people blame the gods and, they're pissed off and they don't like the times that we live in or whatever, some of us. It's understandable, but there's good news to it. It's charging, it's pulling in, it's creating that entropy so that it can build it up and renew it in order to reverse it and give regeneration instead of entropy, which would be the opposite of it losing power. That battery would fill up and you would see its regenerative rate, or it would be the opposite of entropy, which is how quickly it fills up with energy and how quickly it builds up over time, right? And how long it lasts for and fills up with energy, which is the good news, which is what we can look forward to experiencing when we head into, after this next polarity shift, a new age or, the golden age and stuff like that. All right, back to the movie. So we got Colonel Jack O'Neill. I'm Colonel Jack O'Neill from the General West's office. So the dude's still wearing all blue. Okay. And he's from General West's office. Are you ready to learn some more interesting and strange and weird stuff? Check this out. You know how I always talk about nursery rhymes? Right? Nursery rhymes and all that kind of stuff. Like they're weird, right? They're so weird. Why are they so popular? They're so strange. Let's check this out. I'm Colonel Jack O'Neill from General West's office. Well, General West, we already talked about, is between the Pillars of Hercules, or between the anode and the cathode mountains that shoot up their electrical energy of positive and negative, and then Mount Meru and its central island being right there in the middle, between the two, right? Now, let's check this out. Jack O'Neill, let's break him down. Directly related to Jack and Jill. Jack and Jill went up a hill to fetch a pail of water. Jack fell down and broke his crown, and Jill came tumbling after. I recited that from memory. You know how I know that? Because it was taught to me as a kid, and it rhymes, and it's creative, and it allows me to retain the creative side of my mind. I bet all of you were probably saying that right along with me, right? We learn these nursery rhymes. We learn these rhymes as children that have been given to us from our ancestors so that they're breadcrumbs. That's what I'm trying to say. These are really important breadcrumbs. Jack, the character Jack, just like Jack and the Beanstalk and Jack and Jill, etc., but specifically Jack and Jill. Let's break this down, okay? Jack and Jill. You notice how often when they're portrayed, they're both holding on to one pail of water, as if one of them couldn't just hold on to a pail of water, right? And not only that, but if two people hold on to a pail of water, it's more likely to slosh around because they're probably bumping and walking up and down at different paces and stuff. Like, you have to really synchronize yourself to make this actually happen, okay? If I'm actually going to break it down as if it's really two people going up a hill to catch a pail of water. Why are they going up a hill? Water should be at the bottom of the hill, right? Interesting. This is really weird. What's going on here? So we've got a positive, a male figure, Jack, and a female figure, Jill, that are holding on to something, touching each other, and in the middle is life, or in the middle is water. Let's check this out. Now, if we look in ancient Scandinavian mythology, we will learn something very interesting. We had Mani, or Mani, the moon, stole two children from their parents and carried them up into heaven. Their names were Ijuki and Bil. I'm not sure if that's the exact pronunciation, but Ijuki and Bil. They had been drawing water from the well Birgir in the bucket Sigr, suspended from the pole Simul, which they bore upon their shoulders. So, Jack and Jill. This is the ancient Scandinavian origin of Jack and Jill. Hijuki and Bil. Okay? So, positive and negative. We have a system, an electrolytic system, a system of electrolysis or electricity, right? Positive and negative. Where they meet, you have the energy, or the energetic force, or life, or water, etc. A well, the fountain of youth, right? Jack and Jill, positive and negative. Now, it says that they had drawn water from the well. Well, they have to go up a hill, right? Which means they create an electrical arc, an arch, a dome shape, right? They go up a hill, which is Mount Meru, is the great hill, that slope, that steep incline that we referenced earlier, right? Jack and Jill, positive and negative, electrical arc, go up a hill to fetch a pail of water from the great fountain of youth in the middle, or the tree of life, right? And suspended, the bucket of water was suspended from a pole. So we have Jack on one side, Jill on the other, holding a pail of water that is suspended by a pole, right? Which is the beam that shoots out of Mount Meru. So an anode mountain, a cathode mountain, positive, negative, create an electrical arc separated, boom, by a pole, which is Mount Meru, and the beam, the tree of life, the light of the world, etc., which they bore upon their shoulders. So above them, creating electrical arc, right? Super interesting stuff. Hijuki, or Jack, is derived from the verb jaka, or yaka, to heap or to pile together, to assemble, to increase. Bil comes from the word bila, which means to break up or to dissolve. So Jack literally means to add to, or positive energy, you could say, right? To give, to increase, etc. And Bil literally means to break up or to dissolve, or we have life and we have death, basically, right? Hijuki is derived from the verb jaka, to build. So Jack is to build up, Jill is to dissolve, right? Now, the anode of an electrical system may be called the electron donor, which gives away energy, and the cathode, the electron receptor, which receives energy. So typically, this can reverse too. I'm going to read that to you. But typically, when you see things that start with kat or kath, stuff like that, they are things that are filled with life, okay? Because they're receiving energy, they're gaining energy. Meanwhile, someone else is giving it away. Someone else is losing energy because they typically have an abundance of it, so they're sharing it, right? So they're getting rid of energy. Or they're dying. You could look at it like that. Now, in a galvanic cell, the anode is negative and the cathode is positive. They're reversed, which happens in this world as we go through reversals, polarity reversals and shifts and stuff, right? The reverse is true for electrolytic cells where the anode is positive and the cathode is negative. A reaction occurs at the electrode. This is exactly shown to you in what many people would call like, oh, this is the Baphomet symbol. Okay, oh, it's satanic, it's evil, this and that. It's esoteric, okay? It's hidden symbolism. It's cartoonified truth that, you know, people don't understand. So they call it evil and pow, shun it, and etc. But look at the words that are on the tattooed arms of the Baphomet. Solve, or solve, right? Which means to divide, to break apart. That's Jill, figuratively speaking, right? Coagula. Coagula means to bring together, right? Just like whenever you cut your arm or whatever, you know, and the blood coagulates, the blood comes together and strengthens and hardens and stuff, and, you know, helps you out. So solve, coagulate. Jill, Jack and Jill, right there, boom. One up, one down, because on the earth, one is shooting out energy and the other is pulling it in and receiving the energy. One island is an anode island of death, essentially, that is giving away energy all over the place. And the other one is an island of life, which is receiving all of that energy. And those things that are born on those islands would also tend to reciprocate those energies, being mostly male or mostly female on those respective islands. So here's an example. If you look at like an electrolysis example, we've got Jill, the Jill side, or the Jill island, or the island of females, or the island of female energy, I should say. I'm not saying females are bad or anything like that, but they're giving away energy. They're the givers. They're the ones that give energy, boom. And then Jack over here is receiving the energy. So this one underneath, you can see it creates, let's imagine these are two islands, okay? The anode and the cathode island. In the middle, you would have the Mount Meru, which creates the actual charge in the middle, right? This one has sludge. We've talked about that sludge, that anode mud that falls off of it, which is why in this part of the Arctic Ocean, this might as well be the Arctic Ocean, okay? You have all this buildup of sludge and the ocean becomes difficult to navigate, or it was at a certain point in time when the waters were much lower. It was difficult to navigate these areas because they were filled with this mud and sludge and just thick waters and stuff. All right, now let's go back to that dude's name real quick. What was his name? Jack O'Neill. Okay, so we figured out what Jack means. Okay, so the Jack is the one that increases, according to the nursery rhyme, the one that receives all of the energy. It all depends. Jill can too. Okay, Jill can too. It's just they flip and they reverse. Okay, so let's go back to Jack's name here. Jack O'Neill. So let's check out Neil. O just means of. So of, like Jack O' Lantern means Jack of the Lantern. And by extension, it can mean son of, or somebody who is an ancestor of, right? So Jack O'Neill, Jack of the Neil. Neil comes from Niall in Irish, you could say, ancient Viking languages and stuff, which can mean champion up here as you see, but down here, it actually comes from Nagel. So this Najal was actually Najal, the hard G sound that we say, Najal, right? Not Nial, as in like an I, like J was a capital I, but it was more of a mistranslation. Incorrectly Latinized, they say, as Nigellus. I think the opposite might be true. So Nigellus, Niger, which means black. Nigel, Nigel, right? So Neil is directly related to a word that implies dark or black. So he's the son of something that is dark and black. Mount Meru, Rupus Nigra, the black rock, the black mountain. Nail, also directly, nail, basically, right? So the nail, nagel. Now, if you look up the old word, the original spelling of nail, it's actually nagel. That's how I say it. So it's got a G in there, just like Neil does. They figure it's an incorrect spelling. I think it's a correct spelling. Negel, nagel, Nigel, etc. The word nail literally is related to High German nagel or nagel, and it means kneel or nail. So he's the son of the nail, or the black one that has a nail coming out of it, which is Rupus Nigra. All right, so he's funny. He says this figure of 10,000 is ludicrous, right? He's like, that's off. You know what I mean? And she says, but the sonic and the radiocarbon tests are conclusive. Well, okay, then your math is off. You have miscalculated something, because the independent researcher says, no, it's much earlier than that. But modern academics goes, no, it's much older than that, actually, right? So somebody's got to be right. Are they? No, they aren't. All right, so back to Colonel O'Neill over here, and he says, I'm here in case you succeed. So why is the military there? In case we succeed, in case that portal, that Stargate, opens up. Why? Because there's bad stuff up there. There's bad stuff inside the Earth. I mean, I don't want to say bad, but things that can be very dangerous to tiny little humans that we are, okay, which are Fantazoids. Basically alien animals, alien bugs, alien creatures and stuff that are going to be the invasion that people have been talking about and referencing, okay? Not usually the humanoids, but it can also be humanoids. But this is what humans do, okay? They get all very defensive and stuff, and instead of trying to work with nature, they just try to fight off all of the foreigners, basically, right? So that's the military. 2 weeks later, in the same military installation, this I can see from my house. This is the peak and the top of Cheyenne Mountain, which is the mountain that houses NORAD, or the military complex that's called NORAD, which is a huge protective barrier that people can go to survive the apocalypse, basically, to run to the mountains for protection or whatever. This is a huge hollowed out mountain, and that's NORAD. That's how you could tell all those little, I see all those little, satellite, I don't know what they're called, radio towers or whatever they are, on the top of that mountain every single day. So that's NORAD. Now, the independent researcher is trying to figure out what the hieroglyphs mean, because that's why they hired him, right? So he's reading a newspaper and he sees a correlation and he goes, oh my God, Orion. He holds it up and he sees the newspaper had a picture of Orion, and he sees this constellation right here. It's got the body, the arm stretching out, and then Orion's bow, just like he sees here. So now he realizes, wow, these constellations represent patterns up there in the sky, right? All right, cool. So we get back to this gathering of the military minds and political people, right? And the first thing they do, just like in the movie Troll, when they brought in that independent researcher, that woman who was also like an excavator, or what do they call it? People that, look into like ancient history stuff. She was an independent researcher in that movie too. They brought her into this room full of experts and political people and military leaders and stuff. And this is what always happens. The military people always have an issue. They have a stick up their butt and they're like, oh, so you're telling me that you just solved what they couldn't solve in 2 years? You did that in like 15 minutes or whatever, right? 3 days. I don't know what it was. So it gets an attitude. They always do this. They always get attitudes. They're like, oh, you think you can do what we couldn't do collectively? Well, that's a part of your problem. He's like, 2 years. And he just kind of looks around like, wow, like, okay, wow, my mind's blown, that it took them 2 years to figure this out. It's because they can't see in images, okay? The ability to see an image form, to do dream interpretation, to understand what your dreams are saying to you, because they speak to us in images, to read the signs and the omens of the world that also speaks to us daily in images, right? This is an ability that we have lost as we lost our telepathic abilities as well. But those abilities are starting to return to us. So, I'm thankful for that. So he's trying to figure out what the Stargate is for. And he says that it's these glyphs indicate destinations. Okay. So this Stargate is has something to do with going to somewhere, going to a destination. Well, what's the ultimate destination? That G symbol, that foot symbol. In ancient Phoenician, it's G. But that place, that symbol that means place, that foot symbol that we talked about, right? That little Nike swoosh or whatever, the foot symbol. He says to find a destination, you need 6 points. This is really interesting. So he's drawing a cube, which is a box, which is a container, which represents our entire world. Okay. Our world is a box. A box is just a container. It doesn't have to be a cube, how he drew up there on the whiteboard. So he drew a box, which is our world. We are in a contained system, right? Even academics agrees that we are in a contained system. So he draws our world and he says to find a destination. So in our world, we need to find a destination. This is the ancient myths and legends from various tribes and cultures across the world that have talked about how they need to go back to the place of emergence, back to their homeland, right? To return to paradise, to return to a garden state or whatnot, right? So to find that, the movie is saying, esoterically, you need 6 points. 6 points or 6 mountains. Interesting. I'll explain that in a bit. But to chart a course, in order to get there, you need a point of origin. The point of origin is the place of emergence, okay? The point of origin is that Tet. The point of origin is Mount Meru. You have to know where that is. You can have all the other points around the world in our modern day maps, but in order to find Mount Meru, you need to figure out the point of origin, which is what we have lost and what we have forgotten. Blake, hey, thank you. Oh, you like the summit presentation? I'm glad. I had a blast. That was awesome. All right, so the point of origin is Mount Meru, basically, right? And altogether, we have 7 points. He says the 7th symbol is actually isn't inside of the cartouche. So he's checking out this cartouche right here. Did I have it? Yeah, I have it. So these are the other symbols that represent these 6 points, and then the 7th one is at the bottom. Now, let's check it out real quick. Let's zoom into it. You can see what it looks like, right? So it's not just this this chevron or this mountain symbol right here with the circle above it, right? But it's also these 2 images off to the side, just like we saw earlier. Now let's see what he says. It's just below. So the 7th symbol, the point of origin, the symbol that means a point of origin, which represents Mount Meru, the Garden of Eden, Hyperborea, etc. This symbol represents all of those things. He says it's just below it, right here. Well, that cartouche represents the blue beam that shoots up, or Osiris, right? Which is also kind of represented by Orion, now that I think about it. But anyways, underneath that, we have this mountain symbol, which is underneath the beam. And he says it's a little pyramid with a funny little line coming out of the top of it. Oh, a funny little line. Isn't that something, right? A funny little line coming out of the top of a pyramid. What could it be? And he says there's these 2 people on either side. Well, what he just drew is Mount Meru, the blue beam of plasma that shoots up out of the top of the plasma volcano when the energy reverses and the light comes up and shines out of the world, and the anode and the cathode mountains, Jack and Jill, that create an electrical arc that go up the hill to fetch a pail of water or a life force at the top, or the fountain of youth. That's exactly what this movie is showing us. All right, so they show him. They're like, all right, he knows a bunch. Let's just show him the Stargate. Like, let's stop hiding this stuff. Let's stop showing him rocks and stuff. Let's actually show him the alien technology. So they take us to the circle, which is the Stargate, which represents the opening up in the sky. And he's like, what is that? And then the woman in black, she's like, it's your Stargate. So this is a Stargate. It's just a circle. Just like in so many movies, they show you rings and circles and stuff that represent portals into other dimensions. Here's my own rendition of the anode and the cathode mountains with Mount Meru in the middle, reaching up to the depressurization point. This is just some art that I made for my website. Here's another one. This is from a video that I did called The Plasma Volcano and the All-Seeing Eye. So for a very short description of everything that we've just gone over with the depressurization hole in the sky and Mount Meru being a magnetic dark mountain, right, shooting up plasma and stuff, check out this video. It's called The Plasma Volcano and the All-Seeing Eye. It's probably like, I don't know, less than 5 minutes long, and you really get a lot of information out of it. This would be like the image of the All-Seeing Eye as looking directly straight up from underneath it, and the plasma coming down from that central hole. That larger one is actually probably not a hole, but an inverted little mini dome that's created up there. And I talk about that too in different videos. Now, they say, oh, it was in front of us the whole time. So what he's talking about is that glyph, that place of origin, the symbol for the place of origin. Our place of origin is the symbol, which is this chevron, what they call a chevron or a point, right? A mountain. It represents a mountain, basically. And these chevron shapes, they just represent mountains, okay? And then a hole right above it. It is the unfinished pyramid, which is a volcano. And right above that, right where the North Star would be is the depressurization point, or the Stargate in our world. All right, cool. So this is what they say in the movie. 2 figures on either side. So he draws the 2 figures, Jack and Jill, right, on either side, with the sun directly above it. Now, is the sun located, though, at the North Pole? Is the point of focus that is going around our world, spiraling around our world, is that located right now at the North Pole? No, it's not. So that means at some point in the past, it was, which means at some point in the future, it will be again. Keep that in mind. So they're talking about all these chevrons that are holding. They're like, chevron 1, holding, chevron 2, holding. And they list all these different chevrons all the way up until, how many are there? Let me just count real quick. So you can see them on the actual Stargate itself. Boom. So here's, man, it's really hard. Let me zoom out, actually. All right, so if we zoom out, you can see there's one here. You see the chevron? Boom. That's 1. 2, boom. They look like the letter V, basically, right? Boom. Here's another one. They're upside down letter V sometimes, too. So 1, 2, 3, 4 in the middle, 5, 6, 7. So we have 7 mountains, which, if you look on the old maps, is represented by the word septentrio, or septentrio, septum trio. Sometimes it's spelled differently, pronounced differently, but that trio doesn't mean a trio like 3. Okay, it means deru. It means trees. And by extension, the trees that come out of these other mountains, okay, or other plasma volcanoes that are located up there in the Arctic North, that are these signs of what is about to give birth. Because that huge hole in the middle of Mount Meru, or Rupus Nigra, that emits that light, and that light of the world that shoots all the way up to the sky, that one takes the most time to fill up and to be revealed and to be seen. So all of those tiny, smaller holes, they fill up faster. So all those little side lights, they all come out first, okay? And they sort of build up the crescendo to the huge, massive light that shoots out of Mount Meru in the middle. So that's why you have to have all of these other chevrons hold or light up or whatever, or activate first. Okay. Which is also why in the Bible and other religious books, they have all these like witnesses that surround the throne of God and stuff. And they all are there first, and they all announce the coming of the light and stuff like that. All right. So anyways, we've got this Stargate, opens up, and whoosh, water just comes out of it. There's like a depressurization, like there's water, and then it like depressurizes, it comes out, it shoots out, which is very interesting because the sky, I believe, is made out of water or ice, and that there's definitely water and liquid above there. The Bible talks about the waters above the earth itself. The waters above us. All right, so there's electricity that's buzzing as this is happening, because there's electricity up there in our atmosphere, up there in the sky, which is responsible for the electromagnetics together, are responsible for protecting us from the evil god Ra, or the red eye, the red plasma, etc., that's trying to get into our world, the bad light, okay? There's always positive, negative, and neutral. And that, after it does that, creates this vortex. Now, this is exactly what we will see in our sky if we're on this side of it and our world depressurizes. It's going to suck our atmosphere up towards that opening in the sky, which will also suck up other things as buoyancy is greatly increased in our world for a time until it reaches equilibrium. All right, so here you see it again. They're showing you like the waters above. Now, sometimes they'll mess with your perspective in the movies. They're showing it like you're looking straight on, but symbolically you're looking up. Okay, this is what you would see if you were to look up into the real sky above us, and all of the things that are invisible qualities that hide things, certain things that are up there. If they were removed and the light reverses and you can now see everything in all of its glory, this is probably what it would look like. All right, so we've got this sort of watery sky portal, and they send a robot to go into it. So this robot sort of dips into it, which reminded me of like various movies where they show you the mirrors and the mirror symbolism. There's always a character. Usually it's a truth seeker or a representative of somebody who's on the truth seeking journey, the pilgrim's path, you could say. And they always walk up to this mirror, and the mirror is usually a liquid type of a form. Okay, it's not an actual solid mirror. So like, I know people have looked at actual solid mirrors and they're wondering like, how the heck could a mirror be a portal, right? Well, it's the reflective quality that makes it a mirror. It doesn't have to be mirror that's made out of, you know, sand or whatever that our mirrors are made out of, right? Or brass or whatever, but it's the reflective quality, and it's a liquid form. So it's a liquid form means you can pass through the mirror, or you can pass through the reflection itself. You can walk right through it just like he does, and you can see he's holding his breath because he's underwater. That's probably how they took this shot, okay? So he passes through the waters above and enters into these, what I call plasma conduits, which are these like tunnels out there in the fractalverse. Ken Albert, oh my God, gave me $50. I want to say thank you so much. And says, as a conductor of Star Sweat Lodge, Sundance, various native ceremonies, we work with this. It's basically energy, flow, and movement. Different words describing the same thing. I see you as a white medicine man. Knowledge keeper. Keep it up, brother. Oh, man, you almost about made me cry just now, Ken. Thank you. All right. Thank you, Ken. I'm going to come back to the presentation now. I super appreciate you. All right. So plasma, let's go back. Let's reverse just a bit before Ken jumped in and hooked me up. I appreciate you. The two-way mirror, okay? Liquid mirror, all right? You pass through it. This is the Sipapu also. Ken, like you're probably familiar with that concept. The great Sipapu in the sky, okay? So it's a place of emergence. It's the place of crossing over. It's Nibiru or whatever. It's a Stargate. So they hold their breath, boom, they go through this liquid life, and they, on the other side of it, reach what I call the plasma conduits, okay? Which are these tunnels, these plasma tunnels that you see that take you, and they veer off in different ways. You see this in Bill and Ted's Excellent Adventure. You see this in Doctor Who. You see this all over the place that's shown to you in different ways, right? So you go through those plasma tunnels, and you end up in another Earth. It's an alternate Earth. It's got replicated DNA, replicated coding. It's the exact same as our Earth. It's just that the events have unfolded in a different timeline, in a different way. So all these different realms and stuff are all, many of them, right? They don't all have to be Earth, but there's many Earths out there at the very least, I would say. So they end up here. And they come out of the bottom of this great pyramid in another world. Now they're going to come out and they have to go through two pillars, right? Two beams. They're obelisks in the movie, but they're the anode and the cathode, the Jack and the Jill. They walk out between the entrance or the trunk of Yggdrasil or the trunk of the Tree of Life. They walk out of that and they come out through these two pillars down there at the bottom. Now they're in another world. They're in a desert world. They just left the world of water, okay, which is representative of our modern day, modern technology, all of that stuff. That's when we have the ocean, and we need an intermediary between us and nature because we're running out of energy. So we come up with technology, which is a way to to still have magic, but we can't do the magic ourselves. We have to put the magic into devices. We have to charge these devices. But this is the opposite world that we are heading into when we go past this polarity shift, right? The oceans, because I talked about that increased buoyancy, the oceans will float up and be sucked up into the heavens, sucked up into the sky. Some of it will become a part of the sky as it freezes and stuff. But the oceans will disappear and they will leave behind great, vast amounts of sand, the bottoms of the ocean, deserts all over the place, right? So they end up in, they're basically showing us what you can expect, okay? And also, because the light reverses and now goes up, or the energy goes up, it gives us an alien sky. It gives us a different looking sky. They've got 3 moons in this particular one. Now, their sky is still blue, which I believe it should not probably be that color. It would more likely be a red spectrum sky, or a red color, or even a purple if they're just starting off, right? Purple, orange, red, yellow. Anyways, so he's walking through this desert world, right? So this is our world that we can look forward to. And he sees this crazy looking Fantazoid camel thing, right? This gigantic thing that's over there. This is what it is. And he sees it. It's got a little harness on it and stuff. And this thing's like, eating some bushes or whatever. And it's really interesting because they're in this weird desert world, right? Full of magic and mystery and stuff like that. He sees this creature, which is exactly like these other creatures that are in the Dark Crystal, right? We had the Skeksis and man, I forgot what these guys are called. The Skeksis and the what are they called? The Prophets or something like that. I can't remember what they're called off the top of my head. But the thing looks strikingly similar to what is in the Dark Crystal, which represent the good guys. It's pretty interesting. All right, anyway, so he comes up to it, and it's basically a Fantazoid, okay? It's an otherworldly creature. It's an alien creature from another place, huge and gigantic. And he's like, oh, it's got a harness on. It must be nice. What have I always said? Somebody tell me in the chat. What do I always say? What's the one word of advice I try to give people? The mystics. Oh, cloud spirals. Thank you. Yeah, so these are the mystics, okay? These are the mystics, which are basically these Fantazoids in this movie. Now, what do I always say? Right? When we transition into the new world, into the new age, and there are Fantazoids roaming about, what should you not do? Piscean Errant got it first. Don't pet the Fantazoids. This dude walks right up to it, thinks he's just going to pet it because it's a beautiful creature or whatever. And boom, it takes off, flips him upside down, drags him across the desert. Don't do that. It's not a good idea. Okay. Like, you need to get to know nature and the newcomers to our world, and they need to get to know you. Okay. Don't pet the Fantazoids. At least not for some time. Oh, now check this place out. So they come up on this place, which is this huge tent city or whatever, but look at the rocks in the background. Do you see that? Same type of structures when we went over Beetlejuice and the deserts of Saturn or whatever on Beetlejuice and some other, this was also featured on, what was that name? What was that Vin Diesel movie that we covered with Riddick, or Pitch Black. It was Pitch Black. We did all the Riddick movies, but Pitch Black also had these deserts with these rock formations that shoot up, right? These strange rock formations just shoot up out of the ground. This is because there was electrical scarring here. Okay, the electricity, those snakes, those plasma snakes, those dragons come down and they touch the earth, and before they actually touch the earth lifts up to meet them in the sky, right? Whenever it's all muddy, like, remember, this all used to be ocean. This all used to be the bottom of the ocean or lake or whatever it was. So it's all muddy, right? And when the plasma electricity comes down, right before it gets to the land will be so attractive. All of the protons and stuff will be attracted to the electrons, and they will meet up. They will pull it up into the sky, pulling sand and debris and mud and stuff. And then it will hit and pow, petrify, giving us columns and pillars, physical ones, actual rock pillars and columns and stuff that just shoot up out of the ground. They're called fulgurites whenever lightning hits it. So we still have little tiny examples of it. Anyways, so they meet the natives. The natives are speaking another language, and they walk up to them, and the natives see them as like gods, or emissaries of the gods, those who are sent by the gods, because they literally are like the Anunnaki. They're the fallen ones. They just fell out of the heavens to them, at least in their perspective. And he says, that's interesting. His language, it sounds familiar, a bit like Berber. Okay, now we covered this in my Tartarian video, which is not my Truth in Movie series, but I did this whole video on Tartaria, Grand Tartaria, ancient Tartars, the the Tatars, etc., the barbarians, the barbers, the Berbers, right, the Tudors, all of that we covered, right? They are speaking a language that sounds like Berber, which is bar, anode, cathode, pillars of electricity. The people who live between them on that magical island that is now not on our maps anymore, at the center of the Arctic Circle, right? Surrounding Mount Meru, that's the language they spoke. That's the people they were. They were those from between the bars, or the two bars, or the barbarians, the barbarians, right? Or the Tartars, the trees, the two trees, etc., the Tartarians, etc., right? And then this is where they live. Speaking of electrical looking rock formations, right? This right here is their little town, which totally reminds me of what is this called? The Giant's Causeway in Ireland, I believe, right? So their whole town looks like it's been just pulled up by electricity, little basalt columns or whatever. This is what happens when electricity hits the ground. It forms these specific angles that match the frequency of the electricity that's touching it and the world that's giving its electricity too. So that's why they form these geometric angles and stuff like that. Here's another example of the Giant's Causeway. It looks just like their city, basically, that they live in. So they go into their main little mountain tent of their city, their huge Tartarian tent. Look at this tent, by the way. It's a Tartarian tent. If you look at the old maps, they show you the regions where the Tartarians roamed, not where they settled, because they were nomads, right? But where they roamed, they had tents that looked exactly like this. They drew pictures of that exact same tent on ancient maps, represented by Tartarians in Greater Tartaria. All right, so inside of that huge tent, they have the all-seeing eye, which is Ra, the Eye of Ra. You can see right there. And he's like, they think that Ra sent us here. So Ra would be the opening, the depressurization point, the star, Nibiru, or whatever, the red all-seeing eye up in the sky, and the beings that fall out of it, because they went through those plasma conduits. They went through their mirror, right? And they went into Wonderland, into a different world. He's wearing the emblem. That's just the Ra emblem, so that they noticed that he was from Ra. And then they have this whole chicken scene where there's certain things that pop up in like every single Truth in Movies. You will always find this. Those who are representative of truth seekers and usually main characters and protagonists and stuff, they're represented by chickens a lot of the time, okay? Because of the sound of the chet. that we went over earlier, that wick symbol, that means the light, the double wick, or the two lights, the anode and cathode, the pillars of Hercules, those who come from between them are the kekeon, or those from the het, or those from between the electrical arc, okay? Or the Garden of Eden, okay, basically. And so they're called the checheon, or the chickens, okay? That's where the whole chicken symbolism comes from. All right, so he starts clucking like he's a chicken, clearly symbolically showing that he is a fractalverse traveler, a truth seeker, somebody that has that remnant of the blue beam inside of them that resonates with that frequency of the blue beam where they all live and gather around in that great blue beam, right? And they're sitting there eating some weird Fantazoid stuff. Then he starts to draw on the ground because they speak different languages, right? So this is really interesting. He can't get through to them. He doesn't speak their language. He doesn't know exactly what language it is, you know? So he's like, well, maybe this will work. And he starts to try to draw on the ground. And the priest stands up and he's like, oh, no. Oh, no. Like basically like, holy cow, don't do that. Don't draw. And he's like, wow, it seems like writing is forbidden to them. Now, the movie makes it look like it's a strange alien concept that writing would be forbidden, right? Because we've had it for so long. We've been breaking the rules the entire time, just so you know. Let me tell you why. In the Bible, in Exodus chapter 20, verse 4, it says, thou shalt, I want to say it like, thou shalt not. I'm not going to do it. Thou shalt not make unto thee any graven image. Any. This is a command. This is one of the 10 commandments. Thou means you, means me, means all of us. Okay. And this is just in the Bible. Okay. I'm not saying like you have to or nothing. Okay. I'm just saying this is what it says. You shall not make any graven image or any likeness of anything that is in the heavens above, or that is in the earth beneath, or that is in the water under the earth. That's what it says in the Bible. What is a graven image? Let's check that out. It comes from engrave, or engrave actually comes from grave, or grav, or engrave, right? A grave is something that is dug into the ground, right? Or carved into the ground. Engrave is an inscription, a writing, or an image on the surface. If you look at the word write, it comes from rit and other related words. Proto-Germanic ritan, which means to tear or to scratch. A grave is a tear in the ground, and you put stuff into it. To engrave originally was to tear and to scratch in order to make pictures. Scribe. The word scribe comes from the Proto-Indo-European word scribe, which means to cut into things in order to draw a picture, in order to convey a message. Writing, basically, was outlawed in the Bible. Now, people have translated that and reinterpreted it in all kinds of different ways so that they could still write letters. Every single glyph, every single letter, A through Z, or whatever you guys have for your alphabets, or your alphabets, or whatever, they're all pictures. So when you write, it is a breaking of that particular command in the Bible, period. Drawing a picture, art, all that stuff, in order to convey a message especially, is scratching. Glyphs were scratches. Glyphs were carvings, okay? They were drawings, and that was forbidden. Why was it forbidden? Tom, hey, thanks, Tom, for the donation. Super appreciate you. It says, very interesting take on this movie. Very plausible. Thank you. Oh, popcorn, too. Thanks, Tom. Appreciate you. All right, so check this out. Why would they outlaw writing, right? I mean, some people would jump to the conclusion, which they did in this movie, that it kept the people stupid. Which I can see that. I could understand why, you know, if we don't have writing, how do we learn? Well, you could still learn without writing. It's very easy. Okay. It's not complicated to learn without writing. So that's how they say it in the movie, that the god Ra was trying to control them. So he outlawed writing. It might be to benefit humanity. If you think about it, I mean, all these commandments are supposed to be from like a benevolent God, a loving God, etc. So let's just give it the benefit of the doubt that if the commandment was do not write in order to talk to one another, right? Use telepathy, which is what was originally used, right? Give the information directly so that there is no guess, so that there is no assumption, so that there is no miscommunication or mistranslations, so that the stories don't turn into lies, which they would, and they will, and they do, and they have. over time and time again. Don't draw, don't write, don't try to write things down for people in the future, because people in the future will take that way out of context. They'll forget the original meanings of these things, and they will apply it through their own modern perception filters, which are wicked and evil and selfish. And my laws and the things that I have taught you and conveyed and given to you will be turned into wicked and evil and selfish things. So that is why I could see why they might outlaw writing. Pardon me. All right, so now he's inside of this little Mount Meru Tartarian tent structure, and he's taken into this area where there's all these women, and they're like all grooming him and combing him and cleaning him up and washing his feet, exactly like in The Wizard of Oz when they went to their little Emerald City Mount Meru type thing, and they were all cleaned up and washed up and stuff, right? Remember, it's the place of the electrical charges, the lights that come out of those mountains, that is a clean place. So when you go there, you're cleansed. This energy cleanses your body. It reinvigorates your cells, which gives eternal life, or life for an age, okay? Not like 100 years, that's not an age, okay? Like 1,000 years is closer to an age. But anyways, this is what happens when you get there, when you get to these beams of light in these the celestial cities, you could call it Oz, Mount Meru, Hyperborea, the Garden of Eden. You are cleansed. Various tribes, they have their stories and their origin stories about different like brothers or family members or tribal members that went on these quests to go beyond the skies or to chase the sun or different things. And when they arrived at their destination, they had to be cleaned. Their bodies had to be torn apart and re-put back together. Well, you know, however that happened. And they had to, their bodies were poisoned. Their bodies were toxic. So their bodies are changed, which is why they show you all these characters being cleansed when they get to like this Mount Meru type of a place, okay? And it's because there's so much energy that it reinvigorates and regenerates the cellular structure of your entire body. It's the fountain of youth. It produces more elastin in your skin, which allows it to snap back instead of causing wrinkles and stuff. Collagen adds to your strength of your bones and everything. It's the fountain of youth. And that's why they show you that time and time again of people being cleansed when they get there. All right. So then they show you the outside of this pyramid, all of this electricity all over this pyramid. This represents the electricity surrounding Mount Meru and the Garden of Eden and stuff, the serpent that's wrapped around the garden. And then they show you some different forms of Egyptian gods. Now, I want to say, as far as symbolically, I'm not a big fan of like how they made some of these gods to look like bad guys, right? Especially when they have blue eyes and stuff like that, right? They made some of these gods to look like bad guys, like Anubis. He's not a bad guy, okay? He's the god of the underworld. That doesn't make him a bad guy. You know, that doesn't make him a freaking killer and stuff. But this is Anubis right here, the dog-headed god, you could say. We also saw that on Riddick, too. Is the god of funerary rites, the protector of graves, carvings in the ground, and a guide to the underworld. Anubis is a guide into the underworld. So the dog, there's usually a dog-type creature, right, that protects... that guards the entrance to the underworld, because there are dog creatures that are Fantazoid, otherworldly alien creatures that look like dogs. They resemble our modern dogs, and they probably are the origin of our modern dogs that have been domesticated over time. They're devil dogs, they're hellhounds, etc. All right, so we go inside of the pyramid and we see what looks like this tomb type coffin or whatever, right? I'm gonna talk about that tomb coffin here in just a bit, but it's not a place for dead people. You can't even be dead in this place, okay? If this is Mount Meru, if this is the Cave of Saviors, if this represents the pyramid, I'm going to tell you my whole thing on the pyramid, so stay tuned for just a sec. But that's not a place for dead people. That's a place for life and an abundant amount of life, okay? This coffin is a bath. It's not a place to lay down dead people. That wouldn't even happen in a place as energetically charged as this place. All right, anyways, so they go inside. They're not inside of the pyramid or anything, but they're outside, and the truth seeker dude, he's like breaking down these ancient hieroglyphs and stuff, and he's reading them, and he says, because he realizes what language they speak, and he's like, oh, it says a traveler from distant stars. And you can see they put that all-seeing eye right there in the middle. It's the Eye of Ra, which is the depressurization point up there in the sky. So these travelers escaped from a dying world. Now, this is going to be our story one day, okay? Right now, we're reading it as if it's foreign and it's, you know, something that's happening to us. But Time is cyclical. These things will happen again and again, and we are going to become this. Okay? Some of us, not all of us, but I'm just saying. It will happen that human beings will blast off from a dying world, which will be their apocalypse. So Elon Musk and NASA and all these other people, some others, I mean, just innocent bystanders will get sucked up in cars and stuff, and they'll survive. Okay? Because they're in Faraday cages. Looking for a way to extend his own life. Okay, so people in a dying world, a world full of entropy, and the energy is being charged and pulled down, some of those people get sucked up into the sky and they're dying. They're aging. They're aging super quickly, and they're looking for a way to extend their lives. This is also... I had the Dark Crystal on my mind throughout this whole movie. I don't know why. There's so many references to it, right? This is the Skeksis from the Dark Crystal, okay? They are alien visitors that land in this fantasy world or whatever, and they're looking for ways to extend their lifespans because they are a type of immortals or whatever. Now his body was decaying and weak, which means he lived in a world of entropy, like our world today. Looking for a way to cheat death, he came to a world rich with life, right? So a transition to cross over from a dead and decaying world or place, crossing over into a place of life and abundance, which is the literal translation of the word Eber or Hebrew in the old languages, to cross over from a place of death to a place of life. That's exactly what this dude is. This is a Hebrew. Boom. I mean, I don't know if they look like aliens or whatever, right? It could be, you know, if the conditions change, the body changes, right? Anyways, he came to a world rich with life. And then you could see that the pyramid and the all-seeing eye, that's Mount Meru, and the depressurization point that have been merged into one glyph. And they show you where he encountered a primitive race. And this is sort of like the blue beam or whatever, the electricity. And he encounters a primitive race, which is mankind, which would be a bunch of smaller beings or whatever. And you see like there's like this sort of tractor beam that like sucks this kid up into the sky or whatever. That's just the blue beam and the increased buoyancy in our world. He realized that within a human body, he had a chance for a new life. Now we're transitioning and we're talking about something different. We're not talking about extraterrestrial alien looking grays like they showed you. We're talking about entities in the form of spirit. Spirits that are wandering the fractalverse or wandering the universe or transitioning from one reality or one world or one school of thought, one covered city, dark city or whatever, to another one. Okay? Life there's no death. I don't believe in death. I just believe in life. Okay? So life just transitions. All right? So the change from this life capsule or body to this life capsule or body, people would call death. All right? I just see it as transition from one to the other. Anyways, there are good spirits and there are evil spirits. There are positive ones, there's negative ones. There's ones that add and ones that take, okay? So this is talking about the ones that take. And they come into these worlds, which is the red plasma that comes down from Ra above, and their whole purpose in life as the red plasma is to destroy. It's to tear things apart in order to make way for new growth. So they're seen as killers. They're seen as bad guys. They're seen as life suckers and stuff like that, right? So imagine what the people are going to be like when they possess them. When they go into people's bodies or the bodies of machines or whatever they happen to possess, they become bad. They become what we would call evil. And when they procreate and they share that energy and that energetic signature time and time and time again, which gets less and less and less and less, by the way, until people almost look like they're soulless, you see it, okay? There's the remnant of their family, just like there's the remnant of ours. Their family outnumbers ours right now, but ours is more powerful. We're smaller and we're less, but we're way stronger. But that will change soon. Ra took him and possessed his body. Okay, so that entity, the life force, the plasma from above, Ra, possesses people. It's plasma possession. Some kind of a parasite looking for a host, just like we will see. He used the Stargate, so the depressurization point above, the plasma comes down and possesses people, to bring thousands of people here to his planet. That means that you will see otherworldly beings that descend from the sky. Okay, many different creatures, beings, they don't all have to be humanoid looking like we are, as workers for the mines. Now, this gets really interesting. This whole concept of mining and aliens, landing in new worlds to mine for whatever the mineral is, right? Look, The question that I have asked myself many times is, if you have that much technology, what do you even care about gold? Or what do you even care about silver or platinum or whatever they are, right? But time and time again, we see the story of the Anunnaki, etc. You can see how they're giants in this picture, right? And he also has the circle in the beam that he's holding on to right there. This would be like Ra in the middle, or Medusa's face or whatever, or these are like humans, which are us, little tiny people. But the Anunnaki had their own miners, and he says in the movie about the mineral that they're mining on this alien world, right? He says, this mineral is clearly the building block of all of this technology. So the technology he's referring to is the technology of the pyramids. The pyramids technology, as you see in the movie, was to promote life and to regenerate and to extend lifespans. There is an esoteric mineral. There is a secret mineral known as orichalcum. Orichalcum. Some video games attribute the creation of this to orcs or whatever, which, makes sense because it's got the word orc kind of in it. Orichalcum. Also directly related to radium, which is Ra, by the way. In the table of elements, it's called Ra, radium. It is an element that glows in the dark, and it's represented by the number 88, the het, the two hets, the two boundaries, the pillars of Hercules. 88, Ra, radium, an element that they are looking for and digging up that's extremely rare, that is radioactive and glows, and we have this in our world today, right? It's just that it's suppressed and it's been labeled as evil and bad and radioactive, and it'll give you cancer and kill you, etc., right? Check this out. They used to put these stories out there, newspaper articles and stuff. This one says, let me make it a little smaller so you can see the whole thing. It says, New miracles of medicine accomplished by radium. Now look at the picture of this little radium thing they're showing you. Doesn't that look a lot like the pictures I've been showing you of the depressurization point in the sky, or the Stargate itself? Leading physicians and surgeons of the world report a surprising number of cases of cancerous growths cured, stomach and liver trouble relieved, and even arterial hardening checked. Now, here's another one. Will radium restore youth? Interesting. People were looking into this mineral, mining it up and digging it up because it had, or appeared to have, restorative qualities that added to life and regenerated skin cells and stuff, right? The power of mysterious energy to renew worn body cells is recognized by physicians. This started to seep into our mainstream world. Radium is restoring health to thousands. Now, I know that a lot of people, one of the only things that people pick up on and they remember because it's bad is the Radium Girls, okay, which is a bad story about radium or whatever. And you have to keep in mind, fire is an amazing tool. But if you don't know how to use fire, you can easily get hurt. You can easily get burned. Electricity is an amazing tool. If you don't know how to use it properly, or the proper application of it, you can electrocute yourself. That doesn't mean that I should just be like, oh, electricity? Oh, no, that's evil. That's terrible. That can kill you. Fire? No way. Radium? No way. You know what I mean? Same type of stuff. Radium is restoring health to thousands. Radium versus gray hair. 65 and never a gray hair. Undetectable. Caradium hair restorer, etc. The health-giving waters of Bath, the only natural hot radium springs in Britain. These are all advertisements for little versions of what the movie seems to be secretly sharing about this element that was mined by these beings that fell into a new world and needed to find a way to restore their lives, because maybe they landed in a world that doesn't have the blue beams. Maybe they landed in a world full of oceans and stuff like that, right? Where the worlds are charging energy and pulling the energy in, and therefore they don't get their eternal lives. They don't get their immortality and stuff. They had these little vials of radioactive water, little miracle things. Of course, there's radiator springs in cars, which the cars are alive because of the radium in radiator springs, basically, is what's being implied. And this is also implying that this is a type of Mount Meru, all that, the island in the middle of the world, that's a type of radiator springs as well. So it's all radioactive. It is charged. It is energy that is charged within an earthen material. that glows in the dark, the heart of Tefiti, basically. For more information about this, by the way, I highly recommend this channel on YouTube. It is called The Archivist with Analog. And here's like an example of one of his videos that I did go over and got some material for that I just presented to you. He covers radium quite, and I would like to chat with him. I don't know if he's watching, but I would like to get more information. I'm going to start independently studying it regardless because it's very interesting. Very interesting topic. But be sure to check this out. Let me zoom in on it so I can just give him a little shout out. The Archivist with Analog, okay? Radium to cure the ills of the world, 1910. He pulls up all of these old articles, way more than I just showed you. He's got all these really cool articles about radium and other things too. So check that out. All right, so back to the movie. He says, well, this material, with this substance that they were mining for, that's very rare, he can sustain eternal life, right? So he doesn't need the blue beam itself because the earth has little particles that are charged with energy that you can extract and use in your little machines or whatever. Interesting. Fearful of a rebellion over here, Ra outlawed reading and writing. So during the time of Ra, you don't need reading and writing, okay? Because you have telepathy. Like, if you see the huge red circle in the sky and a bunch of blue beams, ropes that are attached to the, to the ceiling of our world, you don't need reading and writing. Okay, there's no need for it. You could just practice telepathy and instantly doing a little Vulcan mind meld to give all of the exact perfect information, all the smells, all the feelings, all of the history and the memories. You could just transfer them to someone else. You can share exactly what you mean without any chance that there will be misinterpretation, right? He says he didn't want the people to remember the truth, which is what we suffer from right now as collective amnesia worldwide. Now, this is interesting too. This huge spaceship lands on the pyramid. Hey, Miss Doll D just gave me $25 in the super chat and says Stargate was my favorite movie series back in the 90s. I'm loving your Truth in Movies afternoon, Jay. Thank you so much, Miss Doll D. Splashing the popcorn. I appreciate it. We're having such a good time today. All right, so now you'll notice they do put sort of the red sky in this particular shot. It's sunset or whatever, but still you have the symbolic red sky, the three moons, etc. These are also those three circles that you will see in the sky. These three circles are hidden. Actually, two of them are hidden right now. They're Ketu and Rahu. Okay, so you have the sun itself, which is going to spiral around and stop at the North Pole one of these days, which I've talked about in many different videos. But you have these other circles that are invisible in our sky right now, which are what causes different eclipses and stuff when they pass in front of the sun or in front of the moon. All right, but whenever that light reverses direction, you will see them. Ketu and Rahu will be clear as day. Okay. Anyways, you've got these sort of pyramids that drop down from the sky and land on top of it. Oh, here's the capstone, or not the capstone, but the covering of the pyramid that I was talking about, right? This one right here, it says it's limestone casing, the casing stones for the pyramids. Now, this is really interesting too. So limestone casing block from the Great Pyramid. That's what this is right here. You're looking at it. So you see how it's kind of angled like that? So that they put this in between the steps so it made a smooth pyramid all the way to the top. But why limestone, right? Well, limestone is a good conductor of electricity, I believe. And it says, here's an example of the remnant of the original stone surface of the Great Pyramid. So this is what it looks like at the base of the pyramid before, these things were broken up and destroyed. Basically, they were destroyed for some reason and excavated. Now here you have the pyramid again, the Great Pyramid symbolism with the double circle in the middle. This is the all-seeing eye and Mount Meru together in one glyph again. And it opens up and it turns into like this sort of spaceship. Now, it is a spaceship, which reminds me, I have read this before, but this is a little excerpt from the Emerald Tablets of Thoth, or Tot, basically tet, tat, 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 however you want to say it. And listen to what Thoth, the god Thoth, says. Raised I to light the children of Chem. Deep neath the rocks I buried my spaceship, waiting the time when man would be free. Over the spaceship, erected a marker in the form of a lion, yet like unto man. There, neath the image rests yet my spaceship, forth to be brought when the need shall arise. Know ye, O man, that far in the future invaders shall come from out of the deep. Then Awake, ye who have wisdom. Bring forth my ship and conquer with ease. Deep neath the image lies my secret. Search and find in the pyramid that I built. So, in the Emerald Tablets of Thoth, this particular reading, Thoth, the Atlantean, the ancient god or whatever, is talking about how he built the Great Pyramids and how he hid a spaceship inside or underneath in these halls in the underworld, okay, beneath the Sphinx, beneath the pyramids and stuff, is a spaceship. Exactly how we broke down and we saw when we did our Truth in Movies of, what was that movie called? That Marvel movie? Dang, I forgot the name of it. The Immortals? I always forget the name of those people. It's not Immortals, but you know what I'm talking about, right? That Marvel movie, they buried their spaceship down underneath the sands in Egypt or whatever. Same type of stuff. Now, they show you this. This is where Ra is going to make his appearance and stuff. You will see this similar image in Indiana Jones. You'll see it in the Bible. You see all this stuff. There's a little ark. There's a little chest here, and then there's an angel here with its wings covering over this little ark or whatever. This is the Ark of the Covenant that you see biblically, right? With the angels holding their wings over the Ark of the Covenant. It's an electrical arc, basically. That's what the angels are. That's why their wings are not just backwards. You know what I mean? Their wings are covering over it because they're creating an electrical arc with their wings or whatever. So this is the Hyperborean electrical arc of the anode and the cathode mountains that also creates a light source for the new age. So what would happen if you touched the Ark of the Covenant? That's how you know it's an electrical arc, right? It says they must carry the ark. Let me make this bigger. They must carry the ark by using 2 wooden poles that are inserted in rings on the side of the ark. Touching the ark itself will result in death at the hands of God. The reason they use wood is because they don't want to get electrocuted because it's an electrical ark of the covenant or whatever. It's an electrical arc, right? Anyways, so you see Ra. He comes out in his full headdress or whatever, and his eyes are glowing red, which means he represents the red plasma from above, as we've already discussed, right? So he's plasma possessed. He's fully charged. The entity inside of it, it's not the boy, okay? Ra is not this human outside container, okay, that we call a body. Ra is the spirit that is inside of it, which is why his eyes are super plasma possessed and red. See that? I don't know if you can see that. Pow. Red eyes, plasma possessed. Now, we go back to this little burial coffin deal. It's not a coffin, it's a bathtub, okay? It's a place where they put all of that energy, which is what pyramids are, okay? This is my theory on the Great Pyramid, is that pyre or fire means light or energy. Amid, light on the inside, energy on the inside. The pyramids are structures that we have natural ones that are created by the earth herself. Okay, that like I said, the electricity can pull the earth up and petrify it, and it will petrify around it in whatever form frequency matches. Okay, like a pyramid shape. Tully Targus, thank you so much. Right back at you, Tully. Boom, thank you. So anyways, the pyramids are the ones that are man-made, are designed to match the same frequency of the energy that is coming up out of these deep cavernous systems that are under them, especially the Great Pyramid, right? And they're designed to be little houses that have little passageways and stuff to direct the flow of this blue energy, this blue light, these blue beams that are emitted from the earth herself. That are life-giving, and they can redistribute the light, and they can put them into different chambers where we have these little bathtubs where people go in and they lay there and they rejuvenate themselves. Okay, it's the opposite of what we've been told. It is not a place to bury dead people. It is a place to bring people back to life. Okay, it is a place to restore energy and fountains of youth and bathtubs of youth and invigorating, life-giving vril and elements and whatever you want to call it, right? But it's the manna of the gods that they bathed inside of here, and they could direct it through these different passages that are inside of the pyramids too. So you had a passage in a room for the king to go in there to live eternally, and he would bathe in his, and a passage for the queen, and vice versa. All right, so you can see he lays down inside of it, and he's holding on to a place where he actually was bleeding and he got hurt right there. But he lays down inside of this little bath, and he's restored, okay? Which is exactly what's described in this book, which I read. So if you go onto my playlists or whatever, somewhere in there, I don't know where it is, buried in my hundreds of videos, I read this book called Vril, The Power of the Coming Race. And it's all about this inner earth energy that's plasma that's perfectly described in this fictional account of a guy who goes down inside of the earth, finds an entrance down there on accident, and he finds this whole underground civilization, and they use this energetic force, and they take baths in it to restore themselves. Now, here's a little excerpt from the book. He says, "I once tried the effect of the vril bath. It was very similar and in its invigorating powers to that of the baths of Geistine, the virtues of which are ascribed by many physicians to electricity. But though similar, the effect of the vril bath was more lasting." So it talks about in this book how this dude took a bath in vril, or which was this inner earth energy or whatever. And you could see references to that all over the place, like Kong, all the Kong movies where it goes down into the earth and stuff. It's all there. Now, she says about where our people came from. So this girl learns the truth. So she learns to decipher the old writings and languages, and she reads it and stuff. And she wants to tell the people where they came from, right? And she says, and why we can no longer live as slaves, right? We can no longer be slaves, which is what I'm screaming at the top of my lungs every time I do one of these presentations. That's the underlying thing, is to give you the information so that you can free yourself, okay? However that looks, free yourself from whatever is shackling you. There's many things that are shackling us. We're slaves to so many things. You know what I mean? Start peeling them away. Start peeling them off. Start becoming free once more through re-educating yourselves, through teaching yourself, through learning, through new experiences and new perspectives and a change of heart, most importantly. We can no longer be slaves to Ra. We can no longer be slaves to bad energy, to negativity. We are givers, okay? We're the givers of the world. And we're the ones who are going to have these esoteric and arcane memories restored to us. So, goodbye, Ra. You can see, by the way, there's a little sun disk behind him with those horns. That's not the sun. That's not a point of focus, okay? Our point of focus up there in the sky, the sun, doesn't have a little crescent moon around it. That's a different light source up there in the sky that has plasma emanating out of it, basically, that creates these little horns. So here's another, the coffins. This is also like, where you get like the vampire race, how they sleep in the coffins or whatever, and they live for a very long time and stuff, because they're probably living in these kind of coffins that are not intended to bury dead people in. And it shows you some of the other, gods from ancient antiquity, from ancient Egypt, basically. This one right here is Horus. Horus is a cool god. I like him. I don't know. I don't like that they made him a bad guy in the movie. I get it. You need to have your bad guys and stuff. But anyways, he's directly related to Osiris. So right here we have Isis, boom, Osiris, and Horus. Horus is one of the children of Osiris. Isis is his wife. So Osiris represents the blue beam. He represents the electrical arc in its full entirety of both anode, cathode, and Mount Meru in the middle, creating the legs of Osiris shooting up, creating the stick figure that branches out. And his wife, who he marries in this cosmic marriage, is Isis, which has the same headdress as you just saw Ra having, basically. The depressurization point in the sky. And then their offspring is what he changes into, or what he becomes, or what comes out of Osiris is a bird, or a thunderbird, or a phoenix, because these beams start feathering out up there in these auroras up in the north. So you see a falcon, or a phoenix, or a thunderbird, or a bluebird, or all these different images, right? So Osiris, Isis, and Horus. Or is aura, or light, and Oz just means strong. So this is the image that you see. This is a cartoonified version of the beam of anode, cathode, Mount Meru beam in the middle, depressurization point at the top, and then the wings of the thunderbird, or the branches of the tree of life spreading out, etc. And it faces one direction because the wind blows in one direction, way up there in the upper atmosphere in the jet stream. So these are all cartoonified versions of interesting stuff that happens up there cosmically in our sky. Now Horus he also is represented by an eye. And I'm going to teach you how you can tell the difference between the eye of Ra, which is bad, and the eye of Horus, which is good. Now I want to tell you this too. It's the same thing with the swastika and stuff. It all depends on which way the wind is blowing. Okay? It all depends on which cycle we are in. In one cycle, the wind blows one way. In another cycle, it goes the other way. Okay? In one cycle, the sun goes in one way and the stars go in one way. But when it reverses, the light above our world reverses, the wind reverses, the currents, the electrical currents, they all reverse. They go in the different direction, okay? So that's why one is seen as being good, or it gives good attributes to mankind because we live during a time of abundance and magic and energy. But during another time, it's seen as being a bad omen, okay? So the Eye of Ra, do you see how the Eye of Horus creates an R, right? This is the top of the R, that's the bottom of the R, and then there's a little stick. So if it makes an R, it's actually good, and it does not mean Ra. Okay, so if you see an R, it's not Ra. Okay, it should be Ra because it's an R, but it's not. R is good. If it's a backwards R, it's a backwards Ra. It's a backwards God. It's during the time where the spiraling winds, which is representative of this right here, that's the plasma coming out of the hole in the sky, basically, and it spirals the other way. Okay, so if it doesn't make an R, bad, not good. You don't want to live during that time. Okay, if it does make an R, good, sweet. That's the Eye of Horus. All right, so the people grab Horus, or one of the bad guys in the movie, and they're like fighting for their independence and stuff. And this is exactly what happens when the year of Jubilee comes. The slaves are all set free when the blue beams shoot up into the sky, just like they do in the movie. Symbolically, like by that little shot of plasma coming off the planet, touching this pyramid in the sky, by the way, which there is a prophecy too, a really interesting one that's on the internet that this guy does, allegedly a time traveler, that talks about be careful of the pyramids in the sky and don't look at the lights when you see them and stuff. That's all true. Okay, like be very careful about the lights that you allow to enter into your eyes and stuff. So here's the blue beam, symbolic of the little toroidal fields that come down, and you can travel up it and stuff because you could ride the zephyr from inside. Wow, I just got an interesting donation from Bobby Saputra. 50,000 IDR. I have no idea what that is, but thank you. I appreciate 50,000 IDR. I don't know what that amounts to in American money. It doesn't matter. It could be 5 cents. I don't care. Thank you, Bobby. I super appreciate you, and I like your super chat sticker. All right, so here's the blue beam shooting up, right? Going up and destroying the evil pyramid of Ra in the sky or whatever. This is what Ra actually looks like in the movie. It's more of like an alien gray or whatnot. Thanks again, Bobby. High five to you. Then there's an explosion in the sky. Okay, this is symbolically that all that black that you see when they show you space, that's not outer space. That's not on the other side of the firmament. That's still inside of our world. It's just that they curved everything. They made it look all like it's way big and way out there, but it's not. This is a hole in our sky. That's what it represents, right? Big old hole opening up. This is also called an Elve. This is an electromagnetic feature of our sky. You can look this up. We have jets, little jets that shoot up. We've got sprites that go up and down. Electrical. These are all electrical phenomena. And the elves are the highest ones. The elves are way up there in the upper limit, and that's the electricity that goes around the electromagnetics of the dome above, or the field of light above. The people all rejoice in the land between the two pillars, the pillars of Hercules, the anode and cathode, the Jack and Jill, and the Stargate opens back up, and they're able to go home, which is the end of their story, and it will one day be the end of ours as well. Thank you guys so much for joining me with this presentation of Truth in Movies, Stargate. I super appreciate it. Be sure to check out my book, Ancient Oblivion, The Plasma Apocalypse, and look out for my next book coming out soon, probably in the next 2 or 3 months. I'm going to be finished up with that. It's called Return to Hyperborea, which talks about that island at the middle of the world, like we talked about, Mount Meru, etc. And check out my website. My website's pretty sweet too. I got a lot of stuff on my website, JayDreamerZ.com. Until next time, I'm JayDreamerZ saying good vibes and goodbye.
But something's forcing me to stay. Come